100 years old.
It's fine, don't worry. Twisted Tensor says maybe you just became invisible, Lumi.
Guys, I have to reboot a second.
Sure, go for it. You've got a little bit of time. Hi, Irene, how are you? We cannot hear you if you're talking to us, but it doesn't say you're muted.
Testing.
There you go,
Three,
now I
two.
can hear you.
Okay,
Beautiful.
yeah, so the problem was actually this right here. This was the only problem that we had, was like that this was like in this position rather than being in this position, so
Ah, I see.
we're good. I almost restarted though. I was almost like, when in doubt, just restart your computer and...
We're waiting for Maschi, and I believe Rose said she was doing a reboot. How's everybody doing?
Can anyone hear my fan going, by the way?
No, you're fine.
Okay, that's good.
I mean, I can vaguely hear it in the background, but only ever so slightly. It's not a big deal. You're going to hear all sorts of shit from my background when the other half comes back from walking the dog, so no judgment.
Fair enough.
So I apologise. Okay, cool. Well, we're starting to get ready, so get your ass in gear. Yeah, he randomly swears and goes off and all sorts of stuff in the background. He just learned some of what the US government are doing to migrant women at the border, so he just spent 5 minutes stomping around the living room ranting to himself.
Oh, I feel so sorry for him, dude. Especially going through it, right?
He's particularly sensitive about this sort of stuff because his dad's family are German and he is very much a leftist. So it's a whole thing. Okay, we're just waiting for Rose and then we'll get going. I have a vague sort of outline. Anyone who is streaming the conversation can get questions from their chat if they want to, and just, chuck them out there when there's an opening. Mostly just happy for this to be quite like a chill, laid-back conversation about queerness in general. If everybody is cool with that.
Cool. I'm jiggy with it.
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
What's the matter with you? No, my say's off. Okay, I'm gonna pop out a tweet now. Welcome back, Rose. Oh god, what was that?
Someone's blowing out a jug.
There is something in your background, I think, Lumi, making a roaring noise.
Oh, a roaring noise?
That's what it sounds like. It's like a like across the microphone.
Really?
It sounds like that thing that you do when you blow against like a bottle.
Yeah.
It makes that weird.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. A jug.
Oh, okay. Well, let me just fix that somehow.
Let's identify that.
One moment. That's really bizarre.
I'm just wondering if you've got like a fan going or there's some, I don't know, someone outside or something.
No. Oh, I think I'm using the wrong microphone, perhaps.
Oh, that might be.
That could be. Give me one moment.
Is this better?
Much better.
Oh, yeah.
Excellent.
That's that what is it, SM7B? There is it.
The sure? Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds beautiful.
Goddamn.
So
What's up, Mabasai? How are you?
Awesome. Alright, am I coming through clear?
You
We're
good?
Right?
You all good?
Awesome.
Oh, sorry, I'm just going through the list to make sure I have everybody included on the tweet.
That's fair.
Because my brain is soup. It's alright, Rose, don't worry if you can't get it functioning. Cause won't have his cam on anyway, so it's not like you'll be on your own.
Okay, I got something.
Oh, yay. That's positive.
Not going to be very high quality, I'm afraid, but
It's
it'll do.
fine.
I'd like to appear in high res because I have serious.
It looks great.
Oh, can you see my
Better
video?
than mine, anyway.
I can't yet,
Yeah.
but it'll catch up eventually, I'm sure.
There we go.
Mine's saying you're off again for some reason. Like it was doing with me.
I
What?
see everybody except Cause.
It's not anymore, Lumi. You're fine. It's just it's doing what it did with you with Rose for me for some reason and saying her camera's off.
My camera's definitely on now.
That's really weird.
Can everyone else see me?
Yep.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Lumi
Yeah.
can see me.
I can.
I can see you.
I can see you now.
Yeah.
I think Core said he can't either.
Oh no, hang on. No, sorry, I was looking at Twitch instead of Discord, so it's obviously a bit of lag. No, it's fine on Discord.
There you are. Now I've got you. And we've got a Master G too. Awesome. Are you also wearing a onesie, Master G? I can't hear you. You're muted.
Yeah, no, sorry, it's fine in Discord. This is actually not a onesie. This is just a shirt.
It looks like a onesie.
Oh,
Oh,
I'm
Viv!
the only one who came in a onesie. Now I'm embarrassed.
Oh, don't be. It's fine. Nobody
I
cares.
just don't have a onesie.
Thank you for the sub, Viv. You star.
Lumi, we can't hear you.
I think Lumi might be talking to their chat.
Oh, okay. They're talking to someone else.
Although they're not marked as muted on Discord, which is odd. Oh no, not
Some
more
sort of-
tech problems.
I'm sorry, what?
Oh, it's okay. You weren't coming up as muted on Discord, so it looked like you were talking to
Yeah.
us but not making any noise.
I'm on push to talk. I'm chatting with the community really quickly, explaining to them what's going on.
Cool.
So.
Hi, Lumi chat. Okay, so we'll let Lumi have a moment, and then once they're ready, they can let us know. That's
I'm
adorable.
ready.
Okay, cool. So,
No.
we have a
Work for yourself.
vague outline of what we're gonna talk about. Just a vague one. There we go. So I'm gonna start by going around the group. So basic introduction, so name, a plug for yourself, either your YouTube or Twitch channel or your Twitter or whatever else you want to include, your sexuality, your gender, and your pronouns, just to make sure all bases are covered. So we'll start from the top. Jangles, you go first.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jangles. Not really. My name is Justin, but I go by Jangles, Science Led, on the YouTubes, SJW Debates on Twitter. Two names that really rethinking a little bit, which is why you should put some thought and care into names that you pick for yourself. But you know, we'll go beyond that. I do lots of debates, and I'm like science and make videos with lots of sources that no one else reads, but it's fun. And I'm super gay and married, so that's why I'm here.
I love that you clarify that with super gay and married, pronouns, and gender.
Oh yes, he, him, cis dude. I'm sorry.
love your shirt.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the exciting part about me
Yeah.
today, right now.
I will also
Okay.
do one for the audiences of whoever else is streaming, because I know a couple of other people are streaming as well. I am Kezbox. You'll find me at twitch.tv/Kezbox or Kezbox on YouTube, or Kerry with an I, Kerry Kezbox on Twitter. I am pansexual, non-binary, gender trash. And my pronouns are they, them. Lace, you're up.
I dig its gauche and stuff, but gender trash just made me chuckle a little bit.
You can thank Gene Sterling for that one.
Yeah. No. Like that's where I got it. That's what I was thinking about it. Also, why is there a cat? I need to know why is there a cat. No, my name's Lace, or Lace Argar, as the Metropolitan Police Service think I am. I'm also on YouTube under Darius Jonna. Yet again, I have a great dislike for being 18 and trying to think of cool names. Mostly just look me up on Twitter. My main focus is actually on role-playing games, how people can interact and kind of like making that area a bit more inclusive and fun and enjoyable and loving, stuff like that.
Okay.
Oh yeah, sexuality, gender, and pronouns. So I'm cis. Been questioning it for a while, but I think I'm cis. I'm pansexual, for want of a better word, and my pronouns are they and them.
Okay. Mashchi, you're up. You can go next if
Hey,
you'd
I'm
like,
Mashchi.
Lumiru. It's not the end of the world.
Lumi can jump in if she wants.
They.
Or they, excuse me. I don't know if she's responding or not.
Oh heck! Sorry, I forgot I'm on push to talk. Anyway, hi, I'm Lumi Rue. I use they them pronouns. I'm primarily on Twitch, and you can find me at Lumi Rue on Twitch. I talk about gender and sexuality and intersectional feminism and stuff like that. And my gender, I am agender, but I'll probably have a gender fluid gender presentation. And then my sexuality is like, I'm demisexual, I'm pansexual, and I'm also polyamorous. So just like throw all those words in there, and that's me. Did I hit all the questions? Just like double checking.
I think you did. Let me pull up my thingy. Plug, name, sexuality, gender, pronouns. Yes, you did.
I am on it. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Of course. Mabase, you're up.
I am Abasai. I primarily exist here on Twitch, and I also do some other stuff on YouTube. You can find me on both under the name Mabase. Mabase is spelled Mabasei. I am bisexual. I've only really been, I guess, out for like less than a year. I'm polyamorous, and I consider myself cisgendered. I go by he, him.
Okay. Mashchi, now you.
Hey y'all, I'm Mashchi. You might have seen me around small left Twitch poly. This is my first ever panel, so if you haven't seen it before, that's probably why. My pronouns are he, they. I describe myself as literally from my bio. Awkward pause. An NBA gender, panromantic, polyamorous, relationship anarchist. I'd also describe myself as, well, I guess we covered the panromantic. Demisexual also. Did I cover everything? Was that it?
Yeah, I think that's it. Tina, also your first panel. Go for it.
Yes, it is mine. It is my first. Correct.
Ontario Solidarity, by the way.
Yeah. Yes. I am mainly on Twitch. I would describe myself as a cisgender female as well. And I am a bisexual, and I think I covered it. Mainly on Twitch, yeah.
She, her pronouns?
Oh yeah, she, her.
Cool. Okay. Rose, you're up. Can you please put the damn cat away? It's distracting.
Hi, I'm Aisha, and I'm a merc kitty. Yeah, swish, swish.
Oh, dear God, why?
Whoa! There was someone behind that. Hi. I didn't see you come in there. I'm Sister Rose. I go by she, her. I am a transgender woman, but I'd maybe identify as woman plus. I very much identify being a woman, but with an extra wobbly bit sometimes. And I would usually call myself bisexual, but I tend to be primarily femme attracted. And I guess that's me. Plugging my stuff, just Sister Rose on YouTube, and I did a really good video called "Gender as an Experience," and yeah, that'd be pretty neat to check out.
Okay, cool. If you want to drop that in the Twitch chat, by the way, your YouTube
Yeah,
link.
sure.
If anybody wants to drop their YouTube link or anything in chat, feel free. Irene, you're up.
Hi, I'm Irene, no comment chick here on Twitch primarily, although you'll also find me on Twitter and soon, hopefully, YouTube. Like I'm redoing my YouTube presence to split up the different, the panels from everything else and the gaming. But yeah, I do gaming, I do panels, I do my own panel, I go on other people's panel. I like debate, I like discourse. I like just hanging out with people, and yeah, that's vibes. That's another thing that I like. But yeah, twitch.tv slash no comment check if you want to check me out. And my so like I'm pansexual and demisexual, she her pronouns, and am I missing anything?
Name, plug, sexuality, gender, pronouns. I think you got it all.
Yeah, I think I got everything. Okay, so cool.
And cause.
Hi, I am Cause. I'm a relatively new streamer. You can find me at twitch.tv/Cause, which is spelled CAUS3, the not 3, the place in the E. And my Twitter is, as you can see it on the screen there, it's CAUS3S. I spend way too much time on there.
It's true,
So come
you've got
find
brain
me.
rot.
I'm pansexual, non-binary agender. Go by they, them.
Okay, so I have a question to get us kicked off, just in terms of conversation. Let me open my little huge. I made a little tiny spreadsheet to make my life easier. So, opening question: how did you know you were queer? And we will go around the room, as it were, probably in the same order as before. So, Jangles.
It's a really tough one. So I grew up in a really small conservative town in eastern Kentucky. So it was a lot of, this doesn't mean anything. Just because a really hot dude has his shirt off and I can't stop looking, that probably doesn't mean anything. Oh, those voices I hear, like, I joke to my husband all the time that, like, my coming out movement, like the moment I knew was like, you know how in the original Lion King we finally see adult Simba, and he goes, "It means no worries." It's the first time you see that, and I'm like, oh, that did it. Like I was on the path to being straight, but then I heard the voice, and then that did it. But it was never like a moment. It was all just like this gradual realization that just kind of it never hit me all at once. It just when I look back on it, I was like, wow, it was very almost intellectually impressive at like the hoops that I went through to like deny any part of like anything deviating from heterosexuality. It was almost impressive. Uh, so maybe that's where I got started in debate. Like this internal debate I had with myself. Like, no, just because you are only looking at dudes and have only experienced attractions to dudes, that doesn't mean you're gay. So maybe that's where it came from.
Yeah, no, that doesn't mean anything. Lace, you go ahead.
So realistically, I kind of, I guess, deviated naturally towards it. I found men attractive. I found women attractive, and then kind of like as I've gotten older, people who don't fit that binary or deviate from it and stuff like that. I just find them attractive, and that's not to say that like no one's ever affected my sexual growth or anything like that. For a very long time, I was very homophobic, but you know, like once I threw that off like a bad cloak, it was all good. There we are.
I love the description of bad cloak there, that's marvelous. Lumiru, you next. Make sure you press your push to talk.
I've got it. I'm on it. I swear. I'll get it by the end of this panel. So I'd say around middle school. You know, when you have that best friend and you're like really close to that best friend and you're just like, they're really cute. And I mean, they're really cute. Being a demisexual, you know, you have to get that really close bond with someone. And we bonded over a lot of things. And as I noticed, like the typical girl things where you might hold your girlfriend's hand or whatever, be very physically close. I started noticing like, wow, I feel pretty strongly about this. And I felt some shame around it because I wasn't entirely comfortable with my sexuality, of course. But I feel like I kind of ignored it until there was this kind of androgynous woman that I invited to semi-formal that I was just crushing so hard on. I was like, everything she does is cute. Please go to the dance with me. And she said yes. So after that, it was like, I couldn't deny it anymore. I was just like, hey, listen, I don't know what flavor of gay I am, but I am very gay. And that was pretty much my experience kind of figuring that out.
When did you realize you were non-binary?
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
When did you realize you were non-binary?
Oh my gosh, that's a fun story. So actually, after I started coming out as a feminist on Twitch, that sounds so silly, but I came into Twitch as like a feminist in the League of Legends sphere, and I got so much harassment. And when all of your chat is just harassment, you're like, okay, just kidding, gonna wipe all that off my profiles. But then I started teaching feminism once I had like a fair amount of a community. And I had been like dog whistling to feminists by being like, I have an inclusive community. And I started realizing like, wow, I have a lot of trans people in my community and I don't know much about trans people. So I got into, especially non-binary people, and I got into this group on Facebook that was for non-binary people and allies that just wanted to listen and not really like, not go in there and, you know, debate or anything like that. Just be supportive. And I was like, okay, this is how I'm going to learn about non-binary people for my stream, because there's a lot of non-binary people and I want to, you know, get to know what that's about. And I'm like, wow, they're talking about like people wearing binders that aren't men. They're just people who are non-binary and they don't identify with either gender. And I was like, wow, wait, this is what it's all like. This is me. I relate to all of this. This is wild. And that was really my moment. And I ended up coming out on Twitch before really anywhere else because that's where I had supportive people. And I was very lucky that my whole community was incredibly supportive. So that's how I found out I was non-binary.
That's really wholesome. Mabase.
I'm very lucky.
Mabase, how did you find out you were bi?
Let's see. Okay. So I don't know. I guess it was like kind of like a very I would say like a latent thing that I kind of just ignored for a really long time. Like I just kind of always had like these feelings towards like certain like other dudes I would like meet or whatever, but I was just kind of ignore it. Like, oh, that's nothing. Like, you know, dudes can be handsome. People have nice asses, and that's cool. We're just bros. It's cool. I don't know. In like 6 months, I just kind of confronted it. Like, okay, dude, what is this about? Like, why are we like, what is this? What are we doing here? And I was like, okay, I guess we're bisexual. Yep, that's what happened. It's fine. This is fine. I wish I had a better story.
No, it's funny because you describe kind of realizing it very similarly to how I used to when I first came out. Because it was like, I'm on the spot, and also I don't really know how to put it into words. Fuck it, this'll do.
That's a very apt description for discovery and stuff like that. It's kind of like a natural deviation and
Yeah.
way towards things.
Yeah, very much so. Maschi, you're up. They'll unmute themselves on Discord eventually when they get there.
Sorry about that. So many windows. So I discovered that I intellectualized rather, that I was non-binary just a few weeks ago, actually. And then I realized that I was apparently trans yesterday when Kazbox informed me. So I kind of found out I was trans twice, technically, since I identify, I believe, as agender, basically an agender NB. So I've always kind of, from a pretty early age, I'd say I know I had at least some bi tendencies. I would say that I probably lean more towards more pan-romantic and demisexual as opposed to bisexuality, but it's definitely there. So yeah, it was just kind of like we described earlier, just kind of like a gradual process, and I just kind of intellectualized that. I was pretty open about that in my last main relationship with my ex. So yeah, then just kind of start gradually exploring sexuality more from there.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned our conversation yesterday because Maschi was very much like, oh well, it's just non-binary, it's just a thing now. And I'm like, yeah, fine, but you realise that non-binary is technically a form of trans, right? And they were like, wait, what?
Yep. And so I've discovered it twice, basically. I had this conversation actually with a non-binary friend, so I kind of like inferred this a little bit earlier, but I wasn't really sure because I didn't really talk to like any NBs on Twitch about it. But they basically said that NB was basically under the umbrella of trans. Am I correct in saying that? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I talked to them a little bit about non-binary a few weeks back when I realized that I was non-binary. So I was like, hey, I have some questions about this. And then from there, discovered that I was trans. I was like, oh, that's not the way I understood that definition. But yeah, we'll have to look into this. And yeah, here we are. Surprise, I'm trans.
Irene, your turn.
Yeah, it's kind of complicated for me. When did I first know I was like non-straight? So I probably knew I was like trans first, right? And the first sign I had of that was like having a dream that like I put on a pair of earrings and walked outside of the house, and everybody just treated me like a girl, and it was just kind of like more pleasant of an existence. Like, you know, it felt like more like me, not less like me, I guess.
More correct.
And then yeah. So like the whole, you know, idea of like gay and straight would have been kind of like backwards, would have been like grokked as backwards for me at the time, because it was still kind of unconscious. It was still kind of like, you know, manifesting through dreams, not through like, oh wow, I need to do this, right? But as far as like as far as being pansexual, it's actually really confusing because I feel like my sexual attraction and orientation is a little bit fluid. That like at some point, at some times, I'll be into different kinds of people, and that can include, you know, different like, you know, genders as well. But like, I don't know, one of my exes said it best when she said, you just love who you love. And like that was like at that point, like I kind of understood, like, yeah, this isn't like, you know, I kind of stopped feeling iffy about it, you know, and just accepted it at that point. Sometimes you need the right language to like understand yourself, and that's what getting together with other like, you know, other queer people is, you know, really good for, is sort of comparing stories and maybe finding yourself in each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Heavy agree.
Rose, would you like to go next? We can't hear you.
Well, it was the sweet summer of 1969. I was sitting with my friend Arabelle, drinking some white wine. And okay, uh, I'm stalling. Well, I kind of first year in college, I think, because everyone experiments when they get to college. I'd always been kind of a bit different, I guess. Although I suppose a lot of people were different because of the whole autistic thing as well. That confused things further. But yeah, I think once I got out of sort of living in a small village and a small town, and encountering more things and different places on the internet, it did sort of open up to yeah, and a lot of like when I was younger, I did tend to play more with girls and stuff like that. Although still usually girls who played with boys' toys. So, um, there is this stereotype about hey, you're not really God, yeah. Well, see, I kind of came of age in the trans community a bit earlier than a lot of the people that are currently online, so I still remember a lot of the like the very transradicalist kind of communities that were very like you had to grow up playing with dolls and that, or you're not really trans. A lot of them thought that, and so that kind of when that kind of sentiment was there, it was a little harder to because obviously I was like more inverted commas feminine than the average young boy growing up, but it was for someone who didn't necessarily fit the stereotype of what was out there as much. It was a little harder to come to terms with it, but again, in college, things are a bit more open. And then I kind of had to work out my sexuality a bit. Because I was at first I was only really attracted to women, and then as often happens to trans girls, when they get more confidence and stuff and on hormones, I did start to become sort of more openly bi, but still leaning towards women, I'd say. And yeah, sorry, I don't have really exciting coming out. So I think a lot of my stuff is like trauma blocked because I grew up in the 90s in Catholic Ireland. We only closed the last Magdalen Laundry in 1996. And like for people that don't know, the Magdalen Laundry is where they used to send women who were like sort of fallen women, like sex workers and people that had out of marriage pregnancies, stuff like that. So that's the kind of atmosphere I was growing up in, and there was no real frame of reference. And like, of course, in the 90s, you stuff like Jerry Springer hitting and all that, and it was like transness was just such a negative thing. And even as I got more access to information, a lot of the archetypes of sort of transsexuals, I didn't really identify with either, and it was a bit weird. Getting to know younger trans people kind of helped it. So yeah, I did have kind of a messy, complicated coming out, and it took a very long time for my parents to kind of understand this, and yeah, so I guess that's it. Oh yeah, and I'm drinking as Lumi ordered. I am drinking a cozy drink. Here is the drink that I said I would make. Nice. Cheers.
Cheers.
Sláinte, as we'd say in Ireland. Okay,
Yeah, that's something I heavily identify with growing up in the 90s in Catholic Ireland. Because on the top of that, I grew up in the middle of feckin' nowhere in the back
Same,
arse of beyond.
exactly,
So
yeah.
I farmland as far as the eye can see. So that's something I definitely identify with.
Yeah, I used to go up the road to play with the farmer's daughter because she used to like cool things like biker mice from Mars and the turtles, you know. Although I was more into Power Rangers and stuff.
Tina, you're up next.
My experience was very similar to Lumi's actually, with the best friend, the female best friend. We got to know each other a little bit. We would sneak away and kiss each other, away from the adult eyes. Yeah. And then we do like the cuddling thing when we're hanging out, and it just kind of bloomed from there. Just that's where I was like, I guess I like girls as well. Nothing too crazy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cause.
Yeah, it's interesting some of the things other people in here have said. So, because they sort of reflect my experiences in some ways. So, for example, what Jangles was saying, like about like almost like a drip realization of sexuality. I kind of had that. I came out to one of my friends when I was like 14 as like bi, which because in fact this was the 1990s. This was Britain under Thatcher's Section 28 laws. That was a really fucking stupid decision, especially coming from like a working class background where homophobia was rife. So yeah, I came out and then I went back in pretty damn quickly. And then when I was 16, I had a massive crush on my best friend and never actually got to tell him or actualize it or anything. So that sucked. But, you know, it's all part of the course. And then in terms of like gender identity, I've only really been able to come to terms with being like agender the last few years. And I think it's similar to what Irene said about like finding the right language, just finding something that sort of clicks with, you know, the feelings and thoughts that you've recognized throughout your entire life and just finding everything slotting into place. So yeah, I think overall for me, it's all been like a very slow, gradual snowballing process.
Yeah, that makes sense. I will briefly give my own what's name. So I realized I was also into girls when I was about 6 or 7, and I had this massive crush on both Xena Warrior Princess and Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh yes.
I mean, you can't not, right?
Classic.
True. True.
Yeah.
And then I also had like a massive crush a little bit later on Willow, but that's another thing entirely.
My first male crush was Zero from the Mega Man series.
So yeah, I always kind of knew. I came out to my mum first as bi when I was 15. And I didn't get the, oh, that's really bad, or conversion therapy, or it's just a phase. I didn't get any of that. What I got was, no, you're not. That was it. That's all I got. So I very quickly, similar to Cole, stepped straight back in the closet. And then I shut and locked the door behind me. Like, I was out to my closer friends, and high school being high school that went around the school. So I was hideously mocked, and grossly bullied for pretty much my entire school career. For being, I mean, I was weird anyway, because I realise now I have ADHD and I'm autistic and all sorts of other stuff. But I had like, my body would randomly give out on me, so I was randomly on crutches every now and then, or having to take time off because I, you know, bandied my knee up again, or dislocated my shoulder again, or whatever. And so I missed, between that and my mental health, I missed loads of time. So I was kind of the outcast anyway. And then I was bi, and I was into like the alternative music scene as well. So I was into pop punk, I was into heavy metal, I was into rock. Very much not what was mainstream at the time. And I was always of the opinion when I was younger that I was the smartest person in the room. So it didn't go well for me. I mean, they may have been fucking stupid, but they knew they were stupid and they didn't like having it pointed out. And then I always kind of knew that I didn't fit girl, like, since being a kid. Like, even mum and I would have conversations. She was like, you were never a normal little girl, you were never a particularly girly little girl. You were more interested in going off to play with your brothers than stealing your sister's makeup. And it wasn't until I was 24, 25 that I discovered the term non-binary. And I sort of partially came out and didn't get an enormously warm reception for a few reasons. And so I just never spoke of it again. And it's only sort of the last 12 months I've started like actively speaking about the fact that I do identify as non-binary, and I am more comfortable with they them pronouns, and I do have dysphoria. Because before it was just like, you know, it's just easier to avoid this entirely. And by the way, if anyone, as I said earlier, if anyone from other chats has questions, that's fine, just throw them in whenever. If any other panelists also have questions or something they're curious about, throw that in too.
Someone earlier was asking questions about Star Trek Discovery Season 3. I think that was aimed at you, but I guess anyone can answer that.
Oh, Kingfisher was wondering if I knew if there were going to be trans people in there, because there was an announcement apparently made, but I didn't know that. I'm not a huge Trekkie these days. I used to be when I was younger, but I'm not so much now. I don't really have the time to watch telly between streaming and the kids and the house. I just don't have the time.
That's fair. I imagine it's a lot. I know when I was in college, like juggling college and stream, it was just ridiculous. I can't imagine that and kiddos, or like, you know, kiddos and stream. That seems like a ton.
Yeah, it's a lot. Like, they get me up at somewhere between 5 and 8 every morning, depending on how they've slept and so on and so forth. And the youngest is like teething at the moment as well, so he's miserable. So there will be random nights when he's just like, yeah, no, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't care. I'm going to get up and scream. Or even, it's 4 o'clock and I'm not going to let you go back to bed again. So the nights I stream, I often don't stop until midnight or later. So if he's also deciding to have a bad night that night, that's it. I get 2 or 3 hours sleep. That's it. And
Wow.
That's rough.
Yeah, and
yeah, that's very rough.
I have chronic pain and insomnia and stuff anyway on top of that. So between the pain and the kids and the streaming, it's like, yeah, no, sleep is for the weak, it's fine. I'll sleep when I'm dead.
That's a lot. That's my boss used to say that all the time. I've been wondering, actually. I don't have kids. I just have a dog, and my dog doesn't care about my sexuality or my gender or whatever the heck. But I'm always curious. People who are parents, not just pet parents, but parents, does that impact? Like how does that impact you, if at all? Because I know as a polyamorous person, I always get a lot of questions like, what about kids? I don't want kids, so that makes the question super duper easy. But I'm curious, did you have to come out? Did anyone have to come out to their kids? Did their kids ever have questions?
Well, my kids are 5 and 1. They are not of an age where sort of coming out to them is appropriate, if you know what I mean, because they don't really understand what it means, right? Like, my son doesn't even talk yet. Never mind understand. And my daughter still refers to me as, we were having this conversation on Irene's panel last week, which was, you know, I'm still called mum to them because I can't think of a better word, because there isn't a casual one for non-binary parents. But in terms of like pronouns and everything, Ariella still uses she, her for me, just because it's easier for her. It took her a surprisingly long time to get the grasp of pronouns in the first place. Like even being something that existed, and she would misgender and misuse pronouns all the time, like even cis people. Pretty much exclusively cis people. I think I am the only trans person in the area. I'm pretty sure I'm the only queer in the village, in fact. And I wish that was a
Little
joke.
Britain made me just retreat in my head.
Yeah, I wish it was a joke with the reference, but it's not. It's genuine. I am actually, I think, the only queer in the village. And it's a conservative village as well, and it's mostly like it's mostly rural, so it's like a rural suburb. So 5 minutes one way is fields, and then 5 minutes the other way is the village, and then in the village you can get on a bus to go 20 minutes to get into the city.
Oh, fuck that.
I like it. It's quiet, but it means like it's not something I can be particularly open about, just because it saves an awkward questions. Like, my other half was in the doctors with my son last week because my son had to get his jabs, and Lace dropped and came back, and he was just wandering through the waiting room, and there was this woman by herself sat there going, I don't mind trans people, but I don't see why we need all this pomposity. I don't see why they need this and that and the other, and I don't see why this. Sure, why do they have to change anything? Why do they need surgery in the first place? They can't just keep it. They're messing with the way things are supposed to be. They're playing God.
Do you feel very isolated like that?
Oh yeah, very much so. This is why most of my social life is on Twitch.
Yeah.
And my other half sent me a message while she was rambling and was like, I really want to say something along the lines of, yeah, if you had a baby with a hole in its heart, would you let it die?
Yeah.
It's the same bloody logic. Yeah, this is the problem with the area. It's heavily conservative. And both the Conservative and, unfortunately, the Labour Party are invaded with TERFs. Just teeming with them like a disease. It's gross.
This is Turf Island, basically. That's how
It
I
really
explain
is.
it to, like, non-British people now. We're
It
living on Turf
really
Island.
is. I blame bloody J.K. Rowling, personally.
Hey, there's a lot of blame to go around.
No, it's true. I blame
And it
her and Glenna.
even spreads out beyond J.K. Rowling's. It was around before she was
It's gotten considerably worse, and TERFs have gotten considerably more open about being TERFs since J.K.
Yeah.
Rowling was vocal about it.
You have to remember as well that the British press historically has also been very rabid in terms of how it prosecutes things, especially in terms of like minority groups. So weaponizing race is obviously a classic one, but you know, like news stories in the 90s, I remember being particularly vitriolic against like gay people, for example. And you know, honestly, like trans people are the civil rights issue of like the big one of the modern times. So obviously, you can get a lot of money out of you know, every single savage misquoted story you can find about like muscular bearded men in dresses going into changing rooms and shit. You know,
Which doesn't
the climate here is
happen.
ripe for our tabloids. No, of course it doesn't happen, but in the tabloids, it makes bank. You know, it's how
Yeah.
you sell papers. You know,
Yeah.
and we do it. You know, our British tabloids have always been very strong at that.
And the thing is, like, you can say print a retraction, this isn't a thing that happened. They print this thing on the front page, the retraction is this big on, like, the 15th.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's infuriating. I do have some good news, non-binary wise, from the UK, actually, that I wanted to bring up for this. I did show this to Lumiru earlier on. There has been a landmark court case in the UK. A non-binary person took Jaguar Land Rover to court for discrimination in the workplace, and the judge set a precedent that now non-binary people are classified under the Gender Transition Act and the Equality Act, so we are safe from discrimination in the workplace now, legally. And this sets a really
I
good
read
precedent.
that the other day.
Yeah, it sets a really
Fantastic.
it sets a really good precedent, because at the moment, if you want to transition as a non-binary person, like to be more androgynous, then you have to basically lie to your doctor and say that you're transitioning all the way to the opposite binary gender. And the problem with that is so many people don't want to do that because they don't like living a lie. They've gone from living one to now having to live another to get medical treatment. Like, that's gatekeeping is shit. Never mind anything else. So one of the things I'm really hoping that will eventually come out of this is the ability for non-binary people to do what Lumiru's done, which is get, if we want, a breast reduction as gender affirming surgery. Or, oh, be careful.
No, my boo. Sorry, I've been doing that lately. I'm like, no, Lumi.
Yeah, you have to remember not to raise your arms too high.
Still recovering. Yeah, the right one hurts, but we're recovering. We're good. We're cool. But yeah.
Yeah. Or like if an AMAB non-binary person wanted to, they could go on estrogen for a little while to sprout small breasts without having to stay on it. You know, it's infuriating that we have to lie barefaced to gender therapists and to our doctors to get any form of treatment. There was somewhere I was going with all of this, and I can't remember where it was now.
I know you were covering the non-binary news. Yeah, yeah.
Parenting, yeah. So,
fuck Turks, I think.
Also that, yeah. So my daughter kind of knows. She's been told, but she's 5 on Sunday, so she doesn't have like an enormous grasp of like what these things mean yet. And I don't at the moment see the need to tell her about my sexuality, because I'm still with her father. I appear female. He's a cis man. Like, I don't see the need to broach the subject of my sexuality yet. But one of the things I am really hot on is not confirming gender roles and letting her do essentially what she wants and whatever she's interested in. She asked for a telescope for her birthday. She's really been getting into the STEM fields. When I was in my teens, I was told I wasn't allowed because I was a girl.
What?
Yeah. I was told I wasn't allowed to study physics and chemistry because I was a girl.
That is so strange to me. I still don't understand that. Like, I don't get it.
Catholic Ireland in the early 2000s. But bear in mind, we only legalised gay marriage, what, the year before last?
Yep.
You know, I just thought, oh yeah, I don't remember any girls in my chemistry class, and then I remembered I went to an all-boys school.
Speaking of chemistry, because I used to have a chemistry class with this person, I just remembered that someone, a good close IRL friend of mine, who was in chemistry class with in like grade 10, I think it was, ended up coming up to me in the sense of like he had a crush on me for a number of years, and it blindsided me because I was very oblivious to that kind of stuff, I suppose. Yeah, so that was actually part of realizing my process too, because at first I didn't really have like a reaction to it, but because of like social peer pressures, like it was like, you know, obviously I got a bunch of pushback from a bunch of like cis dudes. So, but I later realized that it was actually something that, you know, appealed to me, and more so when I kind of realized, you know, more how demisexual I was. So yeah. Anyways, non sequitur.
It's always nice hearing about like those like social interactions that you get with other people that have to do with sexuality and gender and stuff. Like, so the thing that I should have really said about, you know, my sexuality reveal is I did almost all of it in the Arab world, in very, very conservative Islamic Iraq. And as a result of that, almost all of it was very much kind of cloistered and through the internet and through 4chan mostly. Much to my sins. But like hearing these conversations actually is kind of reaffirming in an interesting way, because it strikes me as being it strikes me as being very wholesome. It makes me feel like, oh shit, you know, like other people have those conversations, other people have those interactions where, you know, someone gets a fucking confession given to them, and I'm like, oh Jesus, that actually happens? Fuck yeah, man, it's great. And like that's kind of... Don't worry, dude, that's not a sequitur. It felt great.
How do you be service?
Muses has a question I'm going to add to the list. Sorry, just bear with me. Talk amongst yourselves for a moment.
Sorry, Kez, I just have to step off for a couple of minutes. I'll be right back.
You're good.
Everyone has all these like sweet stories, and I keep remember when I was like, you know, 12, 13, 14, my journey into realizing my sexuality is like, what if we looked up gay porn as a joke, guys? What if we looked it up as a joke? Yeah, everyone's talking about like I had this friend and we bonded, and I started to realize things like, no, what if I looked up a bunch of dicks on the internet as a joke? So mine's significantly less sweet.
Oh,
It's kind of cute. That's kind of cute. I like it.
Listen, it's legendary. I think it's legendary. Okay.
It's good shit.
It's actually
okay?
very wholesome.
Yeah.
Fellas,
It's
it's
not
okay to
super
suck your
normal.
friend's dick.
No, what we used to do, because like internet was really hard. We were using dial-up until about like 2006 and everything like that. So me and my mates would all gather around the computer and spend hours like bashing out different IP addresses and attempting to find something that wasn't closed under the censors or anything like that, just to find some porn. So if we found some gay porn, okay, that was us for the day.
Oh
we,
my
we
God.
had no choice.
Beggars can't be choosers.
Ah, yes.
So I have got another question in my little lineup here. What was your best queer experience? Whether that's validation or affirmation or your first crush
Sorry, what was the
being.
question?
What was your best queer experience? And I know you, Tina. I don't mean sexually.
Okay.
So like the first time your crush liked you back, or like some form of validation that was particularly important to you, or whatever. Who wants to take it first?
I gotta think about that one. I feel like there are a few. I mean, it's always good when you and your best friend are like flirting for a really long time, and then all of a sudden they have that moment where they're like, "You want to do this?" And you're like, "Wait, like, were you serious flirting with me too?" Oh my gosh, like that's super wholesome. But I feel like there's got to be others.
Yeah, I've
I got
had moments like that. Go for it, Jangles.
I think so. It was at the courthouse when we were applying for our marriage certificates, and I just remember like how bored everybody in that office was. You know, it's this huge. You know, it's what they do every day. So you're like the ninth form that they signed all that day. But me and my husband, like, who we have a lot of family history of like it's a big deal that we were getting married, and then like we walk in there together going like, hey, we would like to sign the documentation for us to be married, and just seeing how bored that the everyone in there was. That sounds weird, but that was like, that's awesome. No one gives a shit anymore. Like, and this is in Kentucky, super conservative state. He's like, okay, sign your paper. Like, do you want to be called husbands or spouses? Like, just like all like the absolute nonchalance with that. It sounds really weird, but I remember, I will remember that office like for the rest of my life, and just how incredible it was for no one to care.
That is incredible. Absolutely.
Sometimes mundanity can be very validating.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely.
Yeah, like when you get to a point where it's just not a big deal anymore. It's like, and you've dealt with that big deal for so long that you're just like that all the time about it. And someone's just like, yeah, this is just another day. You're just another gay couple getting married, and you're like, wait, what?
Yeah, it was cool. I would like to think that we were by no means the first. So, I mean, this was a couple years after it was, yeah, a couple years after it was legalized in the whole of the United States. So I'd like to think that we weren't the first, but still, it was nice.
That's really lovely. Does anyone else have one?
Sorry, I missed the question. What was it?
Best queer experience.
Honestly, it was only from a few years ago. There was they've actually disbanded now, but there was a group, an activist group here called the London Bi Pandas. They were actually run by like quite a hardcore anarcho-communist, which was interesting. Because in fact, I'm like a milk toast sock then. But it was the second London Pride that I ever marched in, and like I helped them build the float and everything, and I was involved in the planning. And obviously, it's like not so much like an experience in terms of like romantic or sexual relationships or anything, but just that sense of feeling that sense of accomplishment and community, and being so entrenched in a group of people who understand your positions and where you're from and what you want to see society to be. Just going through that whole process, putting that all together was probably the best thing. It was the sense of community that struck with me the most, which is obviously one of the things I probably value most about, you know, the broader community across the board.
Yeah, I mean, that is one thing that is good. I can't speak for anywhere else, but particularly for the UK that I've noticed, like, yeah, it's turf island and often homophobe island, but when you do get together with other trans and non-het people, it's like, it is one of the most like affirming things there is, because very few of them are even slightly gatekeepy.
My conception of it has always been that we are like the broad umbrella of the LGBTQ plus communities. We're a family. We're a hella like dysfunctional family at times, but when you come together, for the most part, everyone gets along. You can feel the love and like comradeship and stuff. That's sort of how I tend to see it personally.
Yeah. Does anybody else have a lovely story?
I have a couple.
Go for it,
I
Ray.
got one.
I just have to say that whenever anyone says the family, my brain automatically plays it back in Vin Diesel's voice when he goes family. Fast and Furious. That's just a weird autism thing. But I have a couple. The first one is actually these two are both connected to the idea of witches. The first one was when I first went on estrogen. In Ireland they put you on like blockers before estrogen for a while, which is it's meant to like be 3 months, which is incredibly unhealthy and a terrible idea. So I managed to push to get put on it after a month. And so the first night I actually managed to get on estrogen, and was also the first night of a dance thing I was in called Witches, and it was just really kind of surreal. Like it was only like 2 or 3 in the morning or something, and we're by a place called the Lock in Cork, which is this really nice kind of it's a lake basically next to a bunch of houses and stuff, and there's loads of geese and swans around the place, and we had like these two sort of pillars of fire almost. Yeah, we had two pillars of fire, which is crazy, and you sort of had the main dances, the witches sort of doing they were like the actual proper dances, and we had practiced this sort of dance where we're all linking limbs and stuff and vibrating and pulsating in a dance thing called a clusterfuck. Um, yeah, so the first night, like looking up at the moon and stuff like that, just because like it was all women in that group. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but yeah. So that was bizarrely validating, and it did feel like there was some kind of female divine power coming through me almost, like the stuff that particularly woo Terse would talk about. That was a pretty incredible experience, and just connecting with other women in that way. And probably one of the second ones. This is more related to queerness in general. I have some photos to go with this one actually. Was it was during 2015 during the time of the marriage equality referendum. There was this one guy who was with the very oh god the very boomery kind of no side, and he had like a shirt saying "Keep it real, vote no." And so yeah, he was talking to someone, and he was saying this real fucking right wing conspiratorial things. Like, oh yeah, and of course, when you give him the marriage, you'll be looking for other things as well. And so like that was, and like they love to say like that, oh, we're not homophobic and that, but obviously spouting homophobic conspiratorial stuff. So basically, I was dressed as a witch. For this, I was out canvassing and stuff, and I love to be fabulous sometimes. At least before I got chronically ill, I did. So I started dancing in circles around this old white cis homophobic guy, and waving my wand at him, and I just shouted out, "I'm turning him gay!"
Full Roman Supreme.
And then everyone like who was out campaigning and stuff just turned around and started laughing at the guy, which I don't feel bad about at all. And then the funniest fucking thing, right? He pulls out his phone and pretends to call the guards, the cops, and I can tell because I can see his phone and that there's nothing happening on it, which is hilarious. Yeah, I've got this crazy one going. Oh, it's hilarious. Yeah, so those are my two big experiences I can think of. I think I had a third one, but I've forgotten it now.
Sad, not winning.
I miss Ireland sometimes, but then I hear stories like that and I remember why the hell I left. Who'd like to go next?
Muses had a good one. Chaff, you have a few seconds. So for anyone who doesn't know, by the way, Merging Muses is one of my partners, one of my cores.
So Emerging Muses says, my long-term female partner and I finally decided to stop hiding that we were beyond best friends, and when we came out as a couple, most people were like, finally! And that was the best warm fuzzy feeling ever. Does anyone on the panel have a good one?
Yeah, like this is one that was honestly kind of shocked, surprised, that kind. because at the time when I was thinking about it, I kind of think of it with at the time when I was thinking about it, I was kind of like, no, it doesn't feel nice, hate it, But thinking back on it, I'm kind of like, oh, that's a lovely little thing that happened. It's cute. So when I was coming home, when you come home from stuff, from school and stuff like that, where I was growing up, you couldn't really have someone drive you around because it's a war zone. Stuff can go wrong. So we would get these kind of carpools ostensibly, but carpools in the American or British conception of the word implies a van or at least a large thing. This was a Volkswagen Mini from 1972, and it was literally missing its bonnet, and the fucking front fender was fucked, and the sound system was literally stapled to the wall or to the ceiling with a staple gun. It's that kind of stuff. It was that kind of car. So there was about 12 people shoved into this thing, and I was in the middle. And just for whatever reason, one of the lads who he and I didn't really get along very much. We always were arguing and stuff like that. He put his arm around me, and for the next 15 minutes, I was experiencing something that I could think other people describe as a euphoric feeling. Because I just felt really safe. Afterwards, I was thinking, am I gay? No, I can't be gay, because obviously I was this was me being 15 or so, and I was an asshole. But thinking back on it, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty funny. There was another time where I almost caused an international incident in a Dublin airport, but
What?
You have to tell us that one.
You gotta tell the story, man. You can't do this to us.
So I got invited to Dragon Con over in Atlanta by a friend of mine, and me and my partner at the time, we got there 3 hours before the plane was ready to arrive. All that stuff, and we were really scared of it because it had actually taken me ages to get a visa. I'm a dual national, and dual nationals, specifically from Iraq, during the travel ban period of America trying to be lovely to me, didn't want it to go. So I turned it around. So we arrived really early. We went through the whole process of everything, and we got right to the end, and the person just went, "You've been randomly selected for a search." And I was like, fucking whatever. I've been doing this for years, and I've been traveling around for years. I know about all of that. And they had gone in and put me through all the different things. At one point, they told me that I didn't have to do a search, but then they told me that I did have to do a search.
Yeah, that sounds like Ireland.
And yeah. No, these were all American dudes. This was at the customs office in Dublin airport. So they were all American just talking to me very, very surreptitiously, as if they were doing something wrong, which they were. There you go. Anyway, so I was kind of okay, fair enough. And at one point, they didn't know where to put me. They didn't know where to search me, because usually there's this area over there that they're supposed to do it. But I was one of the only 2 or 3 people who was being searched. So they made me stand in front of just this area, right? And I was kind of standing there, and I desperately needed to piss. It was just that thing of the stress and the nerves and everything, and the flight was about to board, and I was like, well, fuck, I'm going to miss my flight because some dickhead wants to be a racist for 20 minutes. And then this customs officer came over and was like, "Why are you standing here? You're not supposed to be behind. You're supposed to be behind that line over there." And I was like, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" And they were like, "Give me your passport and everything." So I gave him everything, and he looked it up and down, and he looked at me, and so for the sake of slurs, I'm not going to be using slurs or nothing. But he asked me if I was the F word. He just went, "Are you the F? Are you an F?" And I was I just kind of looked at him with a look of what? and this old granny who was going through customs at the same time looked at him and went, "For shame," and walked off. And I was like, "Oh, fair enough." I was then taken into another room and searched. Almost got strip searched as well. But then I got on my flight, and I was just sitting there thinking about that granny, just kind of going, "Fucking hardcore granny, that." Yeah.
Oh yeah,
But
For
that's
shame.
that's Irish mammy energy down to the ground. That's total Irish mammy energy.
When I get older, that's what I want to be doing. For shame. Like, does any of that? For shame. That's
You have to make
incredible.
sure you do it in a super thick Irish accent as well, so it has to be like for shame.
Oh gosh.
For shame, witches.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh
Yeah.
my
Wait,
god.
she's in mock fascist right now.
Calling people words like that. Your mum wouldn't be proud of you at all, sure she wouldn't. She'd give you a bed.
One sec.
Yeah, all of that exactly.
All right, I do actually have to hop. I said I'd swing by for about an hour, and it's a little over. Thank you all so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Before
It
you
was
go,
lovely talking to you, Lumi.
okay.
Lovely
Bye.
chatting with
Lovely
you too.
talk.
Lumi, before you go, I just wanted to say something. Because this are they gone already? Oh no, you're still there. Yeah, we're talking
here.
about queer experiences. I just wanted to say how like cozy and welcoming your little community is. As a queer person who often does have difficulty fitting in with other, it's just nice having places like that that are really like where you don't have to think too much and just be really cozy and stuff. So thank you for that.
I try. I'm definitely human, and our community is definitely on the internet, but I try my best. And thank you. That means a lot. I definitely want it to be welcoming, especially to people who don't necessarily have a welcoming environment.
Yeah.
So thank you. But I hope to catch you all around, and
Thank you very
feel
much
free
for
to hit
coming,
me up
Lumi.
if you need anything. Thank you for having me, Cuz. It means a lot that you invited me. Have a lovely
Absolutely.
day, everyone.
Have
I
a great
might
night.
Yeah.
be
Bye, Lumi.
hitting you up again for one for
Cheers,
MBs
about.
at some point soon.
Yes, let's talk all NV stuff. I can't wait.
Fabulous.
All right. Have a lovely evening, everyone.
You too. Bye.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye. See you tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you for that gift sub to Muses Maschi. Let's see.
She is one of my core partners, so I feel obligated.
Yeah. Sorry, just a second. I just need to drop off the DM. Because I need to find out something. The best kind of obligation. You two are so wholesome, you make me sick.
Barf is actually a meme among us.
Yeah, no, it's like, what? But I'm like ADHD and autistic and also was raised Irish. So it's
Same.
like, yeah, no feelings for you. They just go behind this and that doesn't move. And anytime someone else shows feeling, you're like, what?
I think that's why most of my male biological relatives drink, to be honest.
Does anyone else have a particularly wholesome story about queerness?
I think it's important to have the wholesome stories about queerness and not just all the bad stuff.
I think, I think for me, like one of the big unifying thing, because I've always had issues with the trans communities one way or another. Because, like I said, when I sort of started out, it was kind of very trans men and people calling you hon, that sort of stereotypical thing in certain corners of the internet. And I found other communities can be very cliquish but yeah, but just the whole the H Bomber guy stream, that was really like a unifying thing, I think. In a lot of ways, like people weren't fighting over little things. Everyone was just like all trans rights and stuff. And it's kind of shame that in terms of like BreadTube and all that, things have fallen apart and like the whole community is split down the middle because of ContraPoints and stuff like that. But that one kind of, that was a really, and the surf stream as well, similarly more recently was.
Oh yeah, that was fabulous.
Yeah.
That was like one of the last times I remember like feeling really good about the internet.
Yeah, yeah, pretty
Sort of
much.
like
I,
unambiguously unproblematic, just like awesome stuff. It
yeah,
was really really cool.
that stream was really bizarre because I somehow managed to make some new friends from streamers I didn't even know existed. And then also I met Lottie Blix and I met Vermin Supreme randomly.
Mhm.
I had a chat with Big Joel.
Yeah, that was amazing. And we kept coming up with ever larger Joels.
Yes. And I kept mocking both Joel and Lance for being ridiculously tall in comparison to me. Newsflash, everybody is tall in comparison to me. I'm 5'4".
I wasn't going to say it, but yeah.
I am
Don't you
too,
start.
actually.
I'm like 5'11", and I'm quite broad, so I'm
Oh,
largely.
if I'm having a bad pain day, I'm lucky if I can clear 5'2" because I hunch.
Mm.
What about you, Irene?
Does
Do
any-
you have any wholesome stories?
I'm trying to cobble together an actual story, but like I just know that like when I lived in the Midwest growing up, and like there is nothing to do in the Midwest. If you go there, like where I lived, it was just a bunch of cornfields, and I mean, I guess it kind of smells nice driving by those in the summer, but yeah, it's not there's nothing to do, and as a result, like the kids just find stuff to do, and like we kind of like we're kept out of the when you're at a certain age you can't get into like bars, you can't get into this, you can't get into that, but you can like get together with your friends and throw like a party in a warehouse that you're not supposed to be in. And so it's kind of like the rave scene that like really sort of was the first time like I was around other queer people. But it was a weird thing because I remember like I don't remember a lot of people being out. Like occasionally, like you'd see a gay couple dancing together, and that was like super wholesome and beautiful and refreshing, and just like, but like there was still a lot of like people weren't like as homophobic as like just mainstream people, but there was still like a lot of like kind of like holding your identity to yourself, but you could kind of feel when you're with other queer people. And I think that was the first time like I noticed it, that it was like that there was like that music could be queer. Do you know what I mean? That culture could be queer, because before I'd only really encountered straight culture, and so this was like a brand new thing to me to see like my own culture reflected in actual stuff, right? It seemed like wait a minute, are we supposed to be doing this? Is this okay? Can we
Yeah,
have this even?
yeah, that's something I definitely identify with. Mabase, what about you? Do you have any fun, wholesome stories?
Nope, not really. Not gonna lie to you. For the few people I have told, not really receptive. It, it it's a sad hood movie. Okay.
Oh, we all accept you and think you're valid.
Awesome.
What about you, Tina?
Babbitt, you're valid.
Other than like my middle school experience, I haven't really had much experiences in general, so I can't, other than going to gay pride, which is awesome. I can't really rely on like one-on-one personal experiences.
That's fine. Everybody has different
Cool, because
experiences.
what they were talking about earlier, like finally seeing, like experiencing, like we can have like queer culture, and it can just be like all encompassing, and and it doesn't have to be like an offshoot or a weird thing, or like it can just exist. And like going to
Oh yeah,
pride
for sure, for sure.
that first time you're in an environment where like everything's queer, everything's gay, and it's just normal, is crazy. It was like crazy awesome the first time I ever went to Pride. So I still think Pride parades and Pride events are important.
My first Pride was shortly after I started to realize I was pansexual, but I hadn't come out yet. It was literally the weekend of my 18th birthday. because at this point Pride was in Brighton, particularly in the south of England, because Brighton is the gay capital of the UK, right? So particularly in Brighton, Gay Pride took up an entire weekend. It would start on usually the Friday, and it wouldn't end until the very early hours of the Tuesday morning. And I went out the Friday night, which was the day before my birthday, and got blattered. And ended up making out with a really good female friend of mine at the time. Just because. And then the Saturday night was actually my birthday, and we went out again. And we ended up on St James's Street. And St James's Street is where the parade always congregates. And there's music, there's dancing, and there's drinking, and there's usually drugs. And like my 18th birthday, surrounded by people like me, more than I knew existed. Just throngs of LGBTQIA plus people. Throngs and throngs and throngs. And it was just... You know when you're surrounded by members of your own family that you're really close with? That you can tell anything to? It was like that. It was like being in this enormous sea of thousands of people that somehow all knew me and I knew them. Like in a way that the outside world didn't get.
That's so validating.
It really was. And it was... I ended up sitting down with a trans woman, a trans man, a drag queen, a non-binary person that I didn't actually realise was non-binary at the time, and a few other people of varying genders and sexualities. And we sat in the middle of St James's Street, which was closed off for the parade anyway, in a circle of like 10 of us, and we drank, and we smoked, and we talked, and we talked. I did not get home until 6 o'clock in the morning because time just ran away from us. Because we just talked about anything and everything.
That's a really beautiful story.
I still know some of them now. Yeah, that I think was probably the best experience of kind of starting to get to know myself.
I think it's interesting considering, like, obviously the dipshit straight pride things that have happened over like the last couple of years. It's really like difficult to express that feeling. Obviously you've just expressed it really well, but like it's the thing that they will never understand, you know. And even if it's like even like an LGBT plus person can't explain it as well as you have, it's still there and we all recognize it. And that's the thing that, you know, will never be understood by people who go on about the straight pride thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's this thing. I have like a weird advantage to being able to explain this because I've had to explain it before, but not for this. It's very similar to when Irish people come across each other on the internet. Being Irish is a very specific kind of feeling.
Yeah,
There's
I
the
can see that.
outsiders assume that you're a colonizer. The British treat you like shit, essentially. You're brought up in this very backwards, very conservative, very, very tight collar society with very, very stringent rules on things, and you're told what you are and you aren't allowed to be and do and say, and how you are and aren't allowed to act. There are things that Catholic Irish people, and Irish people in general, particularly in the more rural areas, identify with one another that we don't identify with anybody else from any other country, even if they had like similar experiences, just because of being Irish. Like this is the weird thing. If you're an Irish person and you come across another Irish person on the internet, it can be in the weirdest fucking place. It can be on 4chan, for fuck's sake, and your friends like that, just because you're both Irish. It's this really weird thing. It's like, you know, when you were in elementary school and you met loads and loads of people, some of which you were friends with that you lost touch with, and then later on, like when you're considerably older, like in your 20s or your 30s, you end up getting back in touch with them again somehow, just randomly often. it's almost like that. It's like every Irish person has this inner feeling of connection and knowing one another, if that makes sense.
It
Yeah.
does.
It's very, very similar
Because
to the queer thing.
because like what you're describing in a really really eloquent way, really good way, is just that idea of shared history and shared experience, not in the kind of like, oh, you guys were in the same car crash or you're on the same bus or something, but just like on like a big old cultural level, you have shared experiences of whatever that immediately binds you together.
And it's shared
No.
generational scars as well.
Well, you know, like it's about shared life
Yeah.
and humans immediately connection. I have so many similar experiences just by going like over to like a Yemeni place. There's like a place down the road that I love going down because over there they're all kind of like, they just call me Arabic for no particular reason. They're Arabic too, but for whatever fucking reason. And it's because we kind of like have that shared existence of like being from the Arab world and stuff like that. I get to kind of like feel community with.
It could also be a dig that you pass as white.
Yeah.
That's something I've noticed. Like one of the things that.
No, like most of my stuff is getting called white boy by a lot of people.
One of the things I get from a lot of Irish friends is, like, particularly if I'm talking in my normal British accent, because it's just how I blend in, I code switched, because I used to get the shit kicked out of me for being Irish when I first moved over. One of the things that I get a lot from like my Irish family and my Irish friends, if I sound English, is them calling me Irish. Just Irish. That's just a nickname I have now. And it's funny because I sound like the least Irish person ever when I'm not talking to another Irish person.
Has anyone ever heard of queer nationalism? Just out of curiosity.
No, and now I'm curious and have to go to Google.
Because like my big thing, obviously, like in my channel and other stuff I do, is I'm big on like pop culture analysis and things like that. And queer nationalism was a concept that sort of, there has been some academic study to it, but it's basically like, obviously it's a bit tongue in cheek the way it's described, because obviously there's not like a queer nation, but it's basically the idea of like the LGBT community broadly could be considered like a non-territorial movement. And obviously that tends to be conceptualized around things like shared experiences. We're like a group of people overall who have very different experiences and attitudes compared to like the cis heteronormative majority. And then obviously more sort of other things which are really you can really cherish. Like, for example, you know, there are whole bodies of queer music, there's queer film, there's queercore, there's literature, there's all these sort of things that, you know, we've as a community have access to from a very fundamental level, which is, you know, obviously something very gratifying in many ways. You know, we're not just like part of a cis het world and live in opposition to it. We actually have things that we can cherish on our own terms.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I did do a little thing, and I have heard the slogan "We're here, we're queer, get used to it."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's pretty much where it came from. Yeah, I like reading studies about these sort of things. But yeah, I don't know if that's really nerdy. Maybe Jangle's can appreciate that, but yeah,
I can appreciate it.
Yeah, there's lots of cool stuff out there, like especially like say like queercore punk movements and stuff like that. You know, these were things that stood not only to challenge like homophobia and transphobia within like punk and metal communities, but also to sort of use the expressive potential of those movements to challenge like the sort of wider views of queer people as well. So yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff there that we can tap into, you know, rather than just like assuming that, you know, equality is literally just assimilating into the broader culture. You know, it's literally there are other avenues you can explore if you want to, and there's a lot of enriching things there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I have another question if you are all up first. providing it's not too upsetting or triggering.
Holy!
Sorry, my bloody browser started playing randomly when it wasn't supposed to. Yeah, so providing it's not too triggering or anything. What was your worst queer experience? It can be the most awkward, or it can be just the most viscerally horrible. Go on, Jangles, you look like you have one straight out of the game.
A lot of them aren't my stories to tell. I got punched in the head once. That was fun.
Isn't that just standard for being gay in Kentucky?
What now?
Isn't that just standard for being gay in Kentucky?
Well, I don't want to throw Kentucky under the bus too much. I live in a pretty okay. Well, I used to. Lived in a pretty okay. It's city. I'll call it a city. But,
Area.
You know,
Go for area.
But yeah, it doesn't have to be, half the people hate gay people or a tenth of people hate gay people. Like, if you go outside enough, and remember when we used to go outside, but if you go outside enough, if it's just like 1 in 1,000 people are like so viscerally upset by seeing two men holding hands that they're willing to resort to violence, or if it's 1 in 10,000, like statistically, if you encounter enough people every day, you'll find the one. You'll find that 1 in 10,000 person. So, yeah, I don't buy any sort of arguments that because things have gotten better, we should stop doing advocacy.
No,
Or because
absolutely not.
things aren't, or because things aren't as bad as they used to be, that all the work is done. That's nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I really appreciate about you, right? It's like, it doesn't matter how many conservatives or right-wing dipshits you have to talk to or shout at to make a point. You will throw yourself into the deep end, particularly on trans rights, because you know that it's something that a lot of trans people don't have the emotional energy to do. Just because being trans in the world we have right now, with the shit we get, is emotionally draining as it is.
Yeah, no one should be forced into a position where they have to defend their own existence. So that's why it's up to all of us to stand up. Stand up for what's right. I feel lame saying it, but I genuinely believe it. Like, we have to stand up for what's right.
And that's true, I agree with you.
Yeah, but unfortunately there are people in the community who's willing to roll over and sell us out. So, we have that added thing to deal with as well.
I've been doing a lot of interesting research on why that is.
Oh, I know
That's
exactly
an
what
actual
it is.
thing in science.
There are two reasons that is, maybe three. One is an enormous amount of imposter syndrome that leads to a huge amount of insecurity that leads to you feeling like you have to be the token for the other side in a desperate attempt to get some sort of validation from those who are constantly harassing and hating you. One is internalized transphobia and homophobia and so on to the point of absurdity. And another is very often that they don't know any better. Genuinely, like, they've been brought up in like a conservative area or whatever, and it's just all they've known. Did I cover that well, Jangles?
Yeah. I mean, you hit a lot of the beats that the research I've been doing has been saying. So, I'm curious if y'all don't want to talk about your worst experiences. Another question that I would ask is like, how many of us? Because I was certainly okay. Never mind.
I do have an experience I could talk about. It was another. It was during Pride, again during the marriage equality year, and that was the same year we had the Gender Recognition Act, and I had to stand through like well over an hour of an opening ceremony of Cork Pride and people talking about things, but there was no mention whatsoever of trans people. And so I talked to like the guy in charge of it, who I was kind of like friendly with at the time, and I talked to the head of the like trans support group there who was there, and they were just sort of passing me back between them. And eventually, I just totally lost it, and I jumped up on the Lord Mayor's table and gave a speech about trans and POC inclusion and pride. And that got me a bit of a round of applause, but unfortunately it caused me a lot of shit with the very respectability oriented part of the trans community. And I had to go on the radio and everything, and I was arguing with the guy in charge of Cork Pride and all that. He's very, white cis gay guy, that sort of energy.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it just caused a lot of yeah, it was a lot of hassle, and it was I was totally alienated from the support group then, and yeah, and that support group was kind of weird anyway because they were making Islamophobic comments and things like that before. So, yeah, I've had a lot of quite negative experiences in trans spaces or with other trans groups. I find they can be very cliquey and problematic in various ways. So, unfortunately, a lot of some of my worst experiences do come from trans and LGBT spaces.
Yeah.
You see that a lot with pansexual, bisexual spaces as well. Like specifically in my experience, like pressure you get from either like gay men or lesbians. It's the classic arguments of, oh well, you're not really bi, you're actually just like, you're discovering yourself or you're lying to yourself. That's one thing unfortunately do tend to see quite a bit.
Yeah.
Reflected in like the stories and experiences of bi and pan people. And sometimes, really unfortunately, there is literally like some spaces where there's divides between bi and pan people. It's like one of the most inane conversations, but you will see it where it's like there will be a bi person like basically writing an entire thesis about why pan people don't exist. And it's like, is this really what we need to be doing? Is this literally what the challenges we need to be focusing on? Or these sort of intrafactional things. It's like we have real problems. There are like literally people in the world trying to kill all of us. They're stripping away our rights, and we're really going to go through this crap. Is this literally what we're going to focus on?
It's really funny because like
Hold on just a
like
second.
bi people
Hold on.
experience the same-
Sorry, just I want to say hello and welcome to Lady Raincloud.
Hey.
Hi, Rain.
It's lovely to
Hello.
have you.
Hey, Rain.
Hey.
How are you?
How is everyone?
Oh yeah, we're all right. We're just
Vibing.
sharing stories and vibing. Yeah.
A little sick, but antibiotics fixing it. So
Well, I'm glad you're getting better.
Thank you.
Lace is having some trouble with his camera, it appears.
Dysphoria is a bitch. So if you want me to turn my camera on, I can, but I'd rather not.
Not if you're not feeling up to it. Don't worry.
Good God, dude. Oh my God.
Hi, Jangles.
Oh God. Oh my God. I think I do have a worse experience, but it's not really a direct one necessarily. What do you need?
Is it all right if I, since I'm coming in late, and I kind of jump on some of the questions?
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you.
At some point.
I was actually going to ask you to do your intro because it's something we did for everybody. So, name where you'd like to plug yourself, whether it's Twitch or YouTube or Twitter or all of the above. Sexuality, gender, and pronouns. If you could, please.
Okay. Hi. In that order.
Any order, it doesn't matter.
Hi everyone. I'm Kara, or Rain, or Kara Rain, or Lady Raincloud, or LRC, or whatever. Hey, you with the face. I am trans, female. I prefer she/her pronouns, please. As far as my sexuality is considered, I believe in dual attraction methods, so I consider myself a pansexual lesbian. I believe that exists. And you can follow me twitch.tv/Lady Raincloud and on Twitter @Kira Raincloud as well. Did I miss anything?
No, I don't think so. I think that's it. Let me just drop your Twitter in. There we go. Yeah, so the question we're on at the moment, LRC, is worst queer experiences, whether they're the most awkward or potentially shameful, or the ones that make you the angriest.
The one I always tell people about is the one I have had people tell me to my face I'm lying about. But I will say that one. For those that don't know, there's a little bit of like, how do I put it? Reasoning behind why I was out doing what I was doing, but I'm a disabled veteran with PTSD and a lot of mental health problems. And sometimes insomnia gets me, and I will leave the house and go out to like Meijer at like midnight and walk around. My worst experience was I was at Meijer, and the men's bathroom was being cleaned, and I went into the women's bathroom, which was the wrong thing for me to do for this woman who I ran into when I walked out of the bathroom, who asked me if I was one of those insert slur pedophile types, and basically pulled what I thought was a weapon on me. Could have been a taser, but yeah, so that was the worst experience I've ever had. So, and you know, that was quite some time ago. That was before I started HRT. So, right when I came out, and it was like, you know, how do you run into somebody like that at midnight at Meijer when no one else is in the bathrooms and stuff? So, I've told that to multiple people, and I've had people tell me that there's just no way that it's possible, and that I'm lying about it. So, you know, feel free to believe it or not, but that's what happened. So,
I mean, okay, so in the nicest way I can put this, you're in the States. I wouldn't put anything past transphobes, particularly in the States, particularly TAFs.
The rates, like generally, just at which trans people are attacked and murdered. It's like, how could anyone with a vague engagement with LGBT issues think that that story is unbelievable? That's the problem. That story is entirely believable.
well, I've been told it's unbelievable by other people in the LGBT community. So.
Then they're idiots.
Okay, well, fuck them. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say there. Yeah, fuck them.
Yeah, I'm glad you're okay.
As a Canadian.
Go on, Mastery.
I was just gonna say, as a Canadian, I'm thankful I'm not in the United States right now, given that it's, you know, fascist. But at the same time, I'm uncomfortable sharing a border with them. So yeah, that's a thing.
Like we're right underneath you.
I would like to keep that out of the conversation as much as possible, just because it's focusing specifically on as specifically as possible on queer stuff, and then the effects that other things have on queerness as opposed to like broader political issues.
On that kind of note, like an aspect of that kind of like about life as a queer dude is some of the racial profiling that I receive as a result of being in queer spaces, and an Arab and a Muslim.
Oh, I can imagine.
Oh, Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam, habibti, shonish.
Alhamdulillah.
It's so good, then. So good.
Yeah, I can imagine. All I can imagine people throwing at you are things like the word Rochester and Manchester.
I'm not gonna go into the ins and outs of it, because honestly, like, it'll just turn into, you know, a big old cavalcade of stuff. The big thing that kind of comes up actually is to do with stuff to do with like Orientalism, mainly, like people believing that like just because I'm an Arabic dude, I want a harem, which like a shocking number of people think I want a harem.
I mean, poly people are valid.
Lisa, I'm curious if you've seen the video I did with Riley Grace Rochon talking about transness and Muslimness.
Yeah, no, I haven't, but I'd love to have a look.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I had a pretty Islamophobic experience in Bad Bunny's Twitch, and I kind of went on to talk about a lot of the other experiences I had with Islamophobia in various leftist circles. Yeah, I don't know how well I represented the subject, but I'll post the link in the chat anyway.
I was going to say, Sister Rose, if you want to, because that's something I would also be interested in watching. If you could pop it in the Discord in the videos section.
So I'm gonna go. I gotta go do stuff right now. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming.
Bye, everyone.
I hope you had fun for your first
Thanks very
one.
much. See you about.
Bye bye.
Bye. Oh.
And just to kind of cover the thing, I weren't trying to be like exclusionary towards like polyamory or anything with the thing.
No, it's cool.
There is like this thing that exists in people's perception of other countries as being in some way, shape, or form like just like this idea of the Sultan with his many concubines and his 10,000 wives, and they all have kids. It's like there's like this like it's a thing, like a big old thing about like, oh yes, they're all repressed, but there's the guy at the top and they've got 1,000 wives. And it's not because of any kind of like social basis. It's just because that dude really likes fucking. Like hardcore likes fucking.
Which is also
And,
valid.
Like, it is inherent, like, I dig it, but it is sadly like an indulgence of racist stereotypes.
Yeah, and there's a conflation with polyamory and polygamy. While we're on that note, tis an issue with for polyamorous people.
Yeah. And also there's this assumption that, like, if you're polyamorous and you have multiple partners, A, you have to be a man, and B, all of your other partners have to be women. Because fucking Mormons.
Even like more like sexual lifestyle communities, like that's a thing, and there are like weird arguments about it, and then also problematic racist behavior.
Yeah,
as far as like club scenes and
yeah, in terms of like my experiences, I mean, like, one of the biggest problems I come up against is like, oh, you're poly leaning, so does that mean your other half has like this many other girlfriends? And I'm sitting here like, no, he's monogamous entirely. I am just poly leaning in that I would prefer to have more than one partner. Because A, I really like sex. I just really do. Like, abnormally so. And B, I really like being close to people that I get on really well with, and there is a level of closeness and emotional intimacy there with a romantic relationship that you don't get with a friendship. Irene, you've been quiet for ages. Do you want to add anything?
In terms of worst queer experience?
Or anything else you'd like to add? Mabasay, could you mute your mic for me, love, just because I can hear kids in the background? Thank you, darling. Yeah, was there anything you wanted to add, Irene?
Yeah. I mean, I guess the worst part of like my queer experience at all was that, like, I don't know, that there's still kind of an outsider and insider dynamic, right? That we're sort of used to being the outsiders in like straight culture, and yet there is a way in which we kind of like police, I mean, not that like we have to be perfect or any, or like I expected like, perfection or anything like that, but that like yeah, I mean, like, I guess like an example is the sort of preference of like masculine gay men over feminine gay men. You know what I mean? Like that there's still kind of like a hierarchy that it asserts itself in certain ways, and it's just that kind of like and obviously drama, any so any social circle is going to have drama, but so just really basically the same stuff that's wrong with straight culture, I guess.
There seems to be an awful lot more in terms of drama in the LGBTQIA plus scene though, that I've noticed, particularly recently. Finding it and particularly online. in that it seems like whether it's from insecurity or internalized phobias, it seems like there is an awful lot, even on the left, of holding other LGBTQIA plus people to a higher standard than you hold yourself.
Yeah.
And then being arseholish about it if they slip or don't meet that standard. That's something that really bothers me.
We call this the corporate DNC effect.
It's not even that, because it's completely irrelevant to that. It's this attempt at a mix of LGBT and leftist gatekeeping that doesn't seem to make any sense. It's like you're...
Yeah, gatekeeping is bullshit, excuse me.
Yeah, it's like you're not queer enough, but you're also not lefty enough. And
This is actually... Sorry, guys.
Let me assure you, being a pacifist in the middle of all of that does not help matters at all.
This is something I've wondered about in the past, especially as, like I mentioned before, the activist group I used to be a member of. I remember we were at one meeting, like it was like a casual meeting, it wasn't like an organising meeting, and there was we were going around the table, like just giving backstory, sharing pronouns and stuff. And there was one guy there who one of the leads asked like, tell us something embarrassing about yourself, and there was one guy who said, "Oh, I used to be a member of the Conservative Party." And he was quite young. I think he was younger than me. He was like mid to late 20s or something. And the thing that struck me about that was like, conservatism is trash. It's just, there's no value to it in my mind. Certainly if you sort of couple it with nationalism, for example. But I sometimes feel like there needs to be more done, or at least like open to the idea of like providing spaces for conservatives in queer spaces, because again, like, they are part of the quote unquote family, just because they like support horrible positions that will ultimately undermine all of us, they are still, should be welcome. And also by extension for that, because one thing I've become interested in the last couple of years is minority representation within LGBT plus circles. There's like groups here that like Hidayah LGBT, which is a queer Muslim group that I know somewhat. There's Traveller Pride, which focuses on like Gypsies and Romani communities, Sikh ones and things like that. I sometimes wonder if the LGBT community broadly isn't doing a good enough job of welcoming other groups with slightly different dynamics into the fold. So also it goes to other things as well. A lot of I think it was actually studied on this, like obviously a lot of even like outreach and organizing is done around like club and bar culture. So if you're from like a community, for example, if you're a Muslim who's doesn't drink, or as is often the case, you might be a teetotal or a recovering addict, that can exclude you from queer spaces by virtue of the environment we choose to organize in.
Yeah, and that's true, especially like for like a lot of disabled and autistic people.
Absolutely.
Like capital G gay culture, especially, can be very exclusive in that manner.
Yeah.
I think that does happen quite a lot, especially in the United States. Also, I've noticed like being Native that the representation of LGBT Native Americans isn't actually all that great in the LGBT space. In the United States in particular. That's my personal experience though, so I don't know like if anybody has a differing personal experience, but in particular Native American women and LGBT Native American women like proportionately are at the greatest risk of violence as well. And I think I notice quite often in a lot of LGBT spaces when people are trying to do advocacy and activism, they kind of seem to forget about Native Americans.
Yeah, of course.
And what Native peoples deal with on a daily basis. So it's I would actually kind of agree with that, because I've noticed that personally, that I don't think it's intentional or malicious, but it just sort of seems like people just sort of forget that Native Americans still exist in this country, and a lot of Native American, like not a lot, but there are still LGBT Native Americans, and Two Spirit is a thing that we've known forever. So, you know, that's I think we could definitely do more for representation within specific subcultures and groups, religiously as well as ethnically speaking. You have to forgive me. I'm on a little bit of couple different meds and a little bit of brain fog. So
You're absolutely fine.
You
Don't
sound great.
stress.
You're doing good.
yeah,
You're being very
sometimes, like,
cogent, much more cogent than me.
I'm glad. So, and I've also noticed, like, religiously speaking as well, uh, the Unitarian Universalist Church here in the United States is actually exceedingly good in that regard of like um, LGBT representation and like engagement with multiple religious aspects,
Yeah.
which has been really really good. But yeah, I have seen, like, in particular, like, if you're Islamic or pagan or if you're native or whatnot, um, then there is like a little bit of a glossing over in some people's activism and advocacy, which is why I'm always like harping on about what natives are going through, probably to, the point of pissing people off.
Good. They should be pissed off if they're not paying attention.
They should be. I agree.
Yeah.
If
like
they're
it's
not, they're
similar
not
to
paying
the-
attention.
It's
Yeah.
like it's similar to the whole like memes around like white feminism and stuff. It's
Mm.
like, it's almost sometimes felt like, especially someone who like grew up in the 90s and like being a 90s kid and shit. When you gradually, especially on like television and stuff, you saw more gay characters start to appear. Obviously, I grew up when Will and Grace first came along, so that was like groundbreaking. But it was basically, the idea was like, it's being gay if you're basically like a gay white guy who can just sort of assimilate into essentially like straight white spaces. That's basically what equality means, is basically turning into one of us. But okay, you might like the D, not the V. That seems to be like a lot of the thrust of LGBT activism historically. That's the legacy, and it leaves so many people behind.
I'm curious about what the cis gay men on the panel think about this, but I have noticed that a lot of that still has some leanings towards sexism too, because it's only okay if you're a cis white gay man and you're masculine, because if you're effeminate, then it's still bad.
Yep.
That's my personal experience.
That's
I'm interested and definitely wanted to ask Jangles about that. So.
Yeah, no, dead on. That's 100%.
I did, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. I just posted. I was following up on my story earlier because someone said "left behind," and that reminded me that I wrote this article for the journal.ie. I would not read the comment section; it's horrific. But it was about my experiences with the sort of limiting nature of the LGBT community and respectability and all that.
So what were you saying, Jangles?
No, I think that's definitely the case. Like, I remember.
You're really quiet for me, by the way.
Oh, how about this? Maybe
Yes, better.
a little bit.
Yes.
So, I remember there was a documentary I watched a long time ago, and like some of the first times that people were finally starting to like take gay people seriously, and actual support for gay marriage was becoming a thing, and fewer people thought that being gay should be illegal in the United States, which was not that long ago. 1987, more than half of Americans thought that being in a gay relationship should be illegal. So far cry from just marriage. But there was this bodybuilder, I forgot, Bob Paris, I think was his name. Incredibly handsome, like conventionally attractive, and a bodybuilder, so ripped, like won a bunch of bodybuilding competitions. Came out as gay. He was dating a model who was also incredibly handsome and incredibly ripped. Like, oh, okay, they're okay. They're super hot, super masculine. We'll let them in. We'll let them be accepted in society a little bit because they're not
One of the good ones.
yeah, one of the good ones. They have enough of the things that we care about to let them in. And I think a lot of, and you see this I don't want to speak for anyone else's experience, but like when I first came out as gay, it was really important to me that no one saw me as girly. I needed to be one of the good ones because I wanted to be accepted. did a lot of shit that I'm not super proud of, and had a lot of opinions that were, in hindsight, really stupid. And I'd like to think I've grown a lot, because look at my shirt today. I genuinely love this shirt. But yeah, it was really important to me that I didn't that I broke the stereotypes in order to be accepted, even though it wasn't. I was essentially throwing other people under the bus in order to make myself more accepted. And I
See,
think that's
it's
yeah.
always been different, like in Ireland and in the UK, from my experience, in that if you're a really masculine gay guy, you're weird because you pass as straight, so people assume. And then when it does come out that you're gay, you're more likely to get the shit kicked out of you than if you fit the stereotype. The high voice, the sparkles, the glitter, the femininity. Like, if you fit that mould, you're more likely to be accepted here and in Ireland. Or certainly were. Nowadays, it's not so much of an issue. Though Ireland's still a bit. But the weird thing, it's like the differences, right? So they're sort of very similar attitude, like base underlying attitudes that cause them, but they've ended up kind of branching out into different ways, which is if you can tell you're gay, you're fine. If you can't tell, that's a problem. Whereas from what you said in Kentucky, it was different where you were growing up.
Well, that's the whole reason that the United States has the concept of gay and trans panic defense as a legal defense, which still exists as a defense you can take legally in the United States.
Defenders. And still has its defenders as being legitimate.
Yes, it does. Still have, yeah, very much so. The LGBT Bar Association has a lot of good information related to that, but it's still the whole, concepts of entrapment and like panicking because you thought somebody was one thing and then they turn out to not be the thing you thought they were, and so that gives you the right to hurt them. Of course, as we all know, it doesn't. But I think it's interesting that, and this is me being an annoying, obnoxious feminist, but I think it's interesting how, like, quite literally everything can be drawn back to like sexism and the patriarchy. If you look hard enough, you can see the lines that are like drawn right back to it, because it's like, hey, the cis gay men, they have to be masculine and we're okay with them because being girly is not okay.
Yeah.
And then being a woman is not okay. And then
definitely
all the
internalized a lot of that messaging.
Mm.
Especially when I was first coming out. Like, I came out, I don't know if coming out when you're like 18 is considered late anymore. But, that's basically when I came out to people who were close to me when I was 17, 18 years old, going into college, away from home. And yeah, I worked out a lot more. I went to the gym every single day. What's up?
I'm 36. I came out when I was like 32.
Yeah, I was about to say I'm the same age as Rain. I have a similar sort of thing.
Yeah,
you want to talk about late?
At least in terms of
all right, that's fair.
Identity, I came out very late. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
so good.
That's fair.
27.
I have a question, and I feel a bit uncomfortable asking this, but I'm going to anyway. Again, because I suspect it's like apparently me and Rain are the same age, but I suspect that I'm older than most people here. Were any of you ever? Did any of you ever like express like really homophobic and or transphobics, especially when you were young? Because I know the background I came from. I never hated gay people. I never hated trans people, but obviously, like in terms of like peer pressure in the groups I was in, we used to like constantly use slurs. We used to constantly tell like homophobic jokes and stuff. I'm just wondering if anyone else had that experience, especially if you're younger than me. Is that something that was specific to like generations like mine, and hopefully it's like sort of diluted over time?
Master, you go first. You had your hand up first, then Mabasai.
Sorry?
Master,
so
then
this-
Mabasai.
Yeah, so this leads into something that I kind of want to talk about with my experience. So I'm not out to my biological parents, but there's like a decade of estrangement and like abuse, content trigger warning, by the way, that's kind of tied to that. And at the time, I wasn't really directly threatened by it, but like my father at one point casually had like a talk with me that was in effect basically like, we love you and you're our son, so, and we love you even if you're gay. And then my father's caveat was, we'd fucking kill you, but we love you. So it's that kind of shit. And, you know, that obviously aged extremely poorly as I, you know, developed my own sexual and gender identity. So yeah, it's not really something that they need to know, but like that was something I experienced at a young age, and like I never used like any slurs outside of like a literal game word, like kind of like how gay was, you know, initially meant to be like, oh, that's bad or that's lame or
Yeah.
that's whatever. Yeah.
Actually, an interesting one for you, Kez. We used to use Irish as a slur for a similar thing. If someone was like being like, we thought someone was being stupid, we used to say, "Oh, stop acting Irish."
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
A lot of bad shit.
Black hands, come and fight me like a man.
Um,
That awakened my inner Republican. Sorry.
it's interesting that you say that, Matthew, because I had something very, very similar. In fact, I watched my father say exactly the same thing to my brothers. Exactly the same thing, word for word.
Yeah. That's fucked up. I'm sorry.
I mean, in Ireland, it's a bit different, right? Because when you say you're gonna fucking kill somebody, you don't mean it. It means you're gonna be fucking furious, and they better stay
Same
away
with
from
my
you for a
family,
bit.
old boomer sense.
But,
But
you know, and they'll get over it eventually. But it might take a bit, you know. Mabisa, you had your hand up. Do you want to go next?
Yeah, you know, I'll cop to it, okay? I'll cop to being a fucking gamer, all right. We were all over that COD, okay? With F
So it's not
slurs, all types of shit, everything, okay? I'm really sorry.
No, I have to admit that it's the same. Yeah, but Call of Duty makes you a bad person. It's actually
So does playing League of Legends.
See,
yeah.
But it's
I-
environmental factors, isn't it? It's the
Especially LOL.
community,
Yeah.
it's the circles you move in, you know.
yeah.
And I was definitely like, gay was the insult. Like when we were in middle school, everything was gay.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like it's just what you. I mean, even when you were like, we didn't know what to say. Just like that's gay. It's
I mean,
gay.
my family, like, I didn't come from like a homophobic background or anything in terms of like who raised me, but like just the general friend culture and like other adults outside of that. Yeah, it was just that was the climate. You know, that was how you know, that's how people that entered the vernacular. That's how people spoke to one another. That's how they were the insults you used. It was, you know, we were victims of our sort of circumstances.
Yeah, see, I never used the F slur, the long one, because the short one means something different in the UK and in Ireland. The short one,
Yeah.
the 3-letter version, is a cigarette. If you're having one of those, you're having a cigarette. You don't call somebody that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's still something.
Going up of a fig. Like
There you
that.
go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
could you maybe not? Because that Rose, that could actually get me banned.
Oh, geez, I didn't think of that.
Yeah, because it's a slur, so it's against TOS.
Culture shock.
But unfortunately, because Twitch is so American centric, that's something I have to think of. But yeah, so the 3-letter version it means cigarette. That's what it means. It's not like a hateful thing to say. And
there is actually a food that is the full word as well here.
Yeah, it's like little balls of meat.
Yep.
And it's really weird because yeah, I had the whole everything was gay thing when I grew up. If something went wrong, it was gay, or if there was something you didn't want to do, it was gay, or you know, something along those lines. And then I never really had much transphobia because trans people weren't really a thing where I grew up. There was a bit from telly, like
I'm pretty sure they were a thing. They just were hiding.
no, where I grew up, genuinely, the place I grew up in was so small that there wasn't even another bisexual person for like 50 odd miles to the nearest city, because it was literally the middle of nowhere. My nearest neighbour that was my age was like 2.5 miles away. my school was like 8 miles out from where I lived. Like I lived in the back of nowhere. So yeah, like queer people just weren't a thing. Because by the time people realised they were queer, they fucked off out of Leitrim. Because Leitrim was a shithole for that kind of thing. So it wasn't anything that in my real life I was exposed to. I picked up a few things from TV, like the T slur, the longer T slur as opposed to the 4-letter one, which is actually only one I learned recently. And the amalgamation of the two sexes word. That was another one I picked up, but I didn't really use either of them.
Does anybody else remember like using the words before you even knew what it was supposed to mean?
Yes.
Like using it as because like the way it would get used would be like a generally bad thing, like that is so gay usually meant that it was something in school that you had to go along with that you didn't really like it was annoying. That was generally the sense of how that word was used. And I can remember like picking up some of these words before even really knowing what the what the meaning of them were. I was like in a very like heteronormative sort of environment in Indiana.
Well, it's still again, it's like a very sort of abuse, control, toxicity oriented kind of thing because like Irene said, if you didn't want to do the thing that was gay, or if you were doing a thing that other people didn't like, that's gay, so you would stop doing it so that people wouldn't say that. And I don't know how close Cause and I are because I turned 37 in December, so I would imagine I'm the oldest person on the panel, probably.
I'm 36, so yeah,
Yeah.
you just beat me.
So and yeah, it was big for me. Now also I served during Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Yeah.
So it was worse in the military, specifically in the Navy, because everybody made the jokes about the Navy, right? 150 sailors leave, 75 couples come back, right?
Jesus.
Was the joke, right? If you were in the Navy, you were gay because it was a whole bunch of men on a boat, right?
Yeah.
And so don't be gay because that's just bad, right? And so and I grew up in very very sort of Christian. I mean, I grew up in a cult, but I don't really want to get into that. And it was very much like that for me when I was younger. That the slurs and stuff. And I think like a lot of us probably did have internalized phobia of whatever,
Yeah, of course.
because just like the heteronormative, the cis heteronormative society that we lived in. I mean, for me oh shoot, sorry, when I first thought that I was different, trans, which of course I didn't know at the time, was when I came out to my mom at 9, and she responded by calling the local pastor and his wife. I still remember them, Richard and Betty Liston, and they did an exorcism on me after I told my mom that I thought I was a girl because I grew up in I grew up in a cult. So I had a lot of internalized. There's probably some stuff around the internet that's probably maybe I would say about 8, maybe 10 years old of me being pretty fucking stupid. And saying really dumb things about like trans oriented experiences before realizing what it was. And isn't that like, I don't know, Jangles being the person that he is that has all the information and the studies and the statistics and everything, wasn't there a study about like internalized phobias and the rate at which people that are the most vocally against the thing turn out to be the thing? Because I could have swore that there was, and you're muted, by the way.
If there is, I don't think I have it on mainline. My live.
Way to
voice.
disappoint, Jangles.
I know, but I do have.
must
But I am doing research about how people who are in in pretty low status in society.
Mm.
So a lot of oppressed groups, a lot of minority groups are also almost more likely in some respects to justify the system. And so in this case, it would be like people who might be gay or might be trans themselves might be more likely to bash gay and trans people because they need to justify the system. Like they need to make it so that the system is functional and working, and so they're more likely to engage in behaviors that would let them personally be a part of the system without risking changing it. If that makes any sense at all. I'm probably not phrasing it super well. I actually have to go
I
here in
think
a
it does.
second, by the way. So I
No,
want
that's
to.
cool. Don't worry. I was just gonna say it was more common where I grew up to have like ableist slurs and language over like homophobic or transphobic ones. So everything was the R slur as well as just being gay, just because that was common vernacular at the time anyway, especially on TV, right? But everything was the R slur. Everything was special, or you were a yellow bus window licker, you know.
Yeah, we had that one.
Sorry.
No,
I
no.
want to head off here, okay?
Thanks for coming, Jangles. It's always lovely to have you.
Hi, Jangles.
It's
You
about-
soon.
Good talking to
Bye-bye.
y'all.
Yeah. I am actually curious about my trans siblings on the panel.
Yeah.
Did you have bad internalized transphobia before you realized? Like, was I like, because I realized at a very early age, and then of course because of circumstances pushed everything down and reacted like very, very badly. But I'm interested in your experiences if you want to share.
I think probably the normal amounts, because I just did have a lot of things that I kind of buried and stuff.
Mm.
But I wouldn't like have been very vocally using like anti-trans slurs as regular butt jokes or anything like that. But I did have a lot of self-loathing though, and trying to figure things out and having dreams and stuff that were uncomfortable for me at the time.
I'll be right back. I just need to pop to the bathroom super quick. Talk amongst yourselves while I do.
Hey, Matchi, am I pronouncing your name? Yeah, tell us.
Yeah, Santi.
Yeah, tell us about your SG in the back and any other guitars you have.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it's now queer culture.
I wanted to jump in on what you were saying, but we'll do that first.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So.
Well, and I actually wanted to ask Irene if she had anything she wanted to add too.
Yeah, so electric cherry Epiphone FG special, and then I got a used acoustic more recently on one of my camping trips with my other core partner. So yeah.
And what do you do with them? Do you have music to plug?
Play Rocksmith 2014 and or guitar badly. I'm still learning and trying to get mechanics and stuff.
I haven't thought about Rocksmith in ages. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so I'm kind of fogged right now. So Irene, did you want to jump in?
So in terms of experiences where we
Like, did you have anything internalized before you
oh god
figured yourself out, so to speak, right? Like,
I mean, I didn't know like a lot of like the like existence of trans people is kind of like kept secret to me, so I didn't have like words to internalize that I would have like picked up on. But I can remember like, you know, just kind of like my parents used to call me like the diminutive of my like birth name, like as a joke if I was acting particularly like girly that day. So they kind of like had that as a way of teasing me, I guess. So like, I mean, I don't know, like did I ever like look at yeah, like not so much trans people in a negative light, but I remember like everybody was saying that like gay was like used as like a general descriptor of something like not, you know, being fun. and so and also like just the like. But these were words that like really I think I know that I knew like the word gay as a descriptor for like boring, not fun, whatever, before I ever heard it as like, oh, people that like are attracted to the same sex.
Mm.
Well, I mean, in the UK, gay was historically used for a long time as like actually long before, say for example, like the 70s, 80s, it was actually used as like a just as like a synonym for happy. Like literally, that was like the dominant thing of it. And even like sort of my mother's generation, now they still were surprised at how
Definitionally,
it
yeah.
evolved. Yeah, exactly. That was the
Oh,
thing. They
what a
actually,
gay fellow! What a quid!
what a gay day! Yes, exactly. The gay prince, for example, was some used to call Oscar Wilde. Well, obviously that one had a dual meaning because he was actually gay, but yeah, you get it. You get the point.
Yeah. It was a casual kind of like gamer thing in my experience. It never went like too far a place with me, but like I remember it was just kind of like vernacular back then. So it was just like popular just like through internet gaming basically, which I can somewhat attest to as an extremely online person. I was also gonna say I remember being like I don't know 16 or 17. Actually, probably one more like 17. Anyway, we'll say 17. And I mentioned earlier that one of my good IRL friends basically like kind of came out to me and confessed that like that they had this long-standing crush on me. So in response to like him coming out to me and like basically revealing that, I had a conversation among like two of my like cis het dude friends. And it was basically like a thing that was like shameful or like icky or like weird. It wasn't like necessarily toxic from my personal like anecdotal experience in that specific situation, but like it's just absorbed through the culture that way, right?
Yeah. Right. We are starting to get close to the kind of time limit just because it's getting late. I don't want to wake the kids up.
Yeah, I'm getting pretty wrecked, to be honest.
Well, if at any point anyone's too tired to continue, you can feel free to just...
I might bow out now. So if you want to check out my stuff, it's youtube.com /Sister Rose. I did a slash for this person. And yeah, hopefully I've been really ill, so I haven't done any videos, but I'm hoping to get one out soon. And I'm trying to do a bit of a fundraiser at the moment for medical issues in the local Roma community, and also to have a bit towards getting a new emotional support pet. So spread my YouTube and stuff if you can. We'll get a bit of attention, and hopefully I'll have some new content out soon. So oh yeah, and check out the Sister Rose on Riley Grace Rochon as well, talking about Islamophobia, because that was kind of neat. So sorry for being out of it. I'll see you guys around.
Thanks for coming.
It's about
Lovely
Rose.
meeting you.
Thanks for being here. Have a good evening.
Okay, bye everyone. By the way, the red guitar was a Squire Vintage Modified Jaguar, and the blue one was a Fender Marauder. Just for anyone in the stream who's wondering.
Thank you for that nerdery. I honestly, seriously appreciate that. I know Dick pretty much about guitars, but I still appreciate that.
They're shiny. Night, everyone. Salam alaikum.
Yeah,
Ihawa.
Bon nuit.
Bon nuit, little one. Bon nuit.
Right, I've got a few more questions I kind of want to try power through before we wrap up, if that's cool.
Lightning round.
Not even so much a lightning round, just an attempt to kind of hold things a bit more on track, shall we say.
By the way, I can't get that song out of my head.
Which one?
Which song?
The one that you linked me earlier.
Oh, the MAGA song, good.
Yeah, because it reminds me of the old Donald Duck one, right?
Yeah, I think
when Zidane notices.
That's the one. It ripped. Yeah. They're both ripped off of like an original Nazi song. So that would probably be why, because they're ripped off the same. That they're like redos of the same original. You know what I mean? My brain isn't. Brain go bye bye.
We're getting to the end of the tether.
Yeah, something like that.
Let's go.
So, the next question. Do you feel as though your queerness still has some form of flexibility to it? LRC, do you want
Yeah.
to take that first?
Sure, I guess. What do you mean by flexibility?
Do you feel like it could possibly change in the future, or
Oh.
does it feel like it sometimes wavers depending on maybe the person or what you're dealing with at the time, or your hormone levels, or whatever?
Well, I mean, I've been off my hormones for 2 weeks because the VA sucks. So that's been causing things to change. But I would say yes, because there are periods where I feel quote unquote masculine, but they're, like 2 out of 10 days. And that's like just my I guess my gender identity and expression are a little fluid.
Mhm.
But I've never really tried to identify as gender fluid because it's like 20% of the time I feel masculine and 80% I feel feminine. So whatever that is, whatever it is to define masculine and feminine, which I don't really want to get into that right now. But yeah, and I still don't define myself as gender fluid or gender flux or anything like that. Or like non-binary femme or any of that. But yeah, I think my gender identity and expression might, but my sexuality definitely won't. I don't think, because I identify as pansexual lesbian. So I mean I don't think that's ever gonna change. Who knows? And I also identify as poly. But I'm in a monogamous marriage with a a straight cis lady. It's been interesting.
Yeah, that's
To use is real chat and quick bi erasure is real.
yes.
Pretty much
Yes,
a good example
bi
of that.
erasure is very real.
I was going to get onto that in a bit. So, Lacey, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, like queerness is like a state of being, like a lot of other things. It ebbs and it flows, waxes and wanes and all that. Other
Waxes
things to
and
do with nautical terms. And as a result, like, I mean, I don't want to, like, the thing that I struggle with the most is I never want to make like big declarative statements. So specifically for me, there are times when I feel really ace. There are times when I find everybody hot. Just like that.
I've literally gone through periods like, say, I'm for the most part pretty comfortable identifying as agender, but I still go through periods where I will like sit and try and convince myself that I'm trans in another direction. So I'll either just like sit there and say like, no, you've got to be cis, for example. You're so male burst, you didn't, for whatever reason that's the sort of direction. And then I have times where I'm like, well, maybe I am actually just like starting a journey, and I may find out in the future that I'm actually a trans woman, for example. So that's been quite a unique experience in like the sort of journey I've been on. So if that kind of fits the criteria question, I had this conversation with Jangles once before, actually, just like, this is the position that works best for me now. These are the identifiers that, make me function, help me navigate things. But, I'm not completely closed off to the idea that, there may be further to go and more things to discover.
Yeah, I very much share the same sort of thing because I waver very heavily between definitely feeling non-binary and maybe possibly being a trans guy, or like a trans non-binary guy, kind of like Corvidae, and it's
Do you think? Because I sometimes think if that's just because of having grown up in a world that's overwhelmingly sort of defined by the binary. Literally, if we didn't have that concept, then that
For
wouldn't be, I
me-
wouldn't feel that pull to, or no one would feel that pull to identify in either direction, even if they are comfortable, like, as non-binary people.
For me, I don't think it is, just because I am more comfortable expressing myself masculine most of the time. Like, and happier in myself when I'm expressing myself masculinely most of the time. And I do have like breast dysphoria and hip dysphoria and voice dysphoria and name dysphoria and so on and so on and so on. So like in a lot of ways, I do wonder if I am like, if my end point will be trans man. And like I do vary, like there will be periods of months where I'm like, yeah, I'm non-binary, but I lean more on the female side of the spectrum. And then there will be like, that will be like 3 months of the year, and then the rest of the year it's like, oh yeah, no, I'm basically a dude. You know, and with my sexuality, it's very similar. It's like I will have huge periods of time where I'm only into guys, and then huge periods of time where I'm only into MB folks, and then huge periods of time where I'm only into women. And then I will have like small periods of time where I'm into everybody all at once. And then small periods of time where I'm not into anybody at all.
That's what they the meme in bisexual communities, they call it the bicycle, as in bicycle.
Yeah. I used to be called the bicycle for a completely different reason. I know you and Lace got that, but I don't know if anybody else got that joke.
Nope.
In the UK and in Ireland, if you're on a bike, it means you sleep with everybody. You're the one that everybody rides around town.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah,
You're the village bike. That's the that's the name. Yeah.
That sounds
Village
absolutely
bike.
atrocious.
As a cyclist, I find this offensive.
Hey, I am proud of having been a bike.
Get your leg over the town bike. Yeah.
I have a high body count, and I am not ashamed of it. Because being ashamed of it would be anti-feminist. No, can't with that one, didn't I? Yeah, I find I very much swing wildly, and you know that's fine. I will use whatever word is like there and works for that moment in time, but I'm also very aware that it could change later on, and I might stop swinging and become more steadfast into one thing or another, and that's fine too.
Yeah, so I'm Maschi. Hello, everyone, or Chris. I'm 31, and I just found out I was trans like yesterday. And then I had I intellectualized as like non-binary like a few weeks before that. I mentioned early in the stream I had like an IRL conversation with a non-binary ex. I was just asking them questions about non-binary and the general trans umbrella. So yeah, I feel like I'm still kind of early on this journey. Identify as, so I'm polyamorous. I'm agender. I don't really identify with the concept of gender. It's kind of weird to me when people kind of like talk about masculine or feminine energy sometimes, because I feel it's just like really more dependent on the individual more than anything else. So yeah, so I'm a NB agender for that reason. So I'm very, very new to the idea of like gender studies and that, so I have a lot of reading to do. Yeah. Also, funny little side story. I had actually like flirted with the idea of getting like a larger pride and a trans flag and having it outside my balcony, kind of as a result to like certain neighbors who have our national Canadian flag up, and I kind of get like weird vibes about like what that means. It's not necessarily like one thing or the other, but like I have to like raise an eyebrow. But then, of course, turns out I was trans, so I was like, oh, I guess maybe that's where that came from all along? Question mark.
Do you feel like, I know you're very early on, but are you open to the fact that that might change in the future, or even your like polyamorous identification or your pansexual identification may change in the future?
I mean, the only consistent thing with my life is I just kind of like keep going, exploring, and kind of going farther than I ever thought I would like venture. Whether we're talking about like non-monogamy, ethical non-monogamy, where they're talking about polyamory, lifestyle stuff, being trans, whatever. So I kind of look back at that like chain of events. I'm like, yeah, it's fairly likely this happens again, and I realize I'm actually. So I feel like it's a thing, but I've always been kind of like, I don't know. I feel like I have a certain fluidity in that sense too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. What about you, Irene?
As far as like gender presentation, I don't think that will ever, you know, change. But like, I mean, I'm kind of covered by saying that I'm poly for any, you know, kind of future change. But like, I mean, that did happen like in both directions, and every time it did, I kept on thinking that this was like, wait a minute, I was wrong all along. This is who I'm really attracted to. And then it'd be like, wait, no, it's actually this over here. No, it's absolutely this. And it's like, yeah, I've just kind of like given up on trying to like characterize like the kinds of people I'm attracted to. And I'm kind of sort of okay with that just flowing as it goes. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. What about you, Mavasai?
I don't know. I don't necessarily know if I feel any sort of shifts. I don't know. I guess I've kind of over time been, I guess, growing into, I guess I would say, my taste after kind of accepting myself, and it seems like I feel like I'm good where I am, I think. But you know, it's open to change. It you know, it happens.
That makes sense. Okay, we've got 5 more questions. So we're doing well. What does being queer mean to you? We'll start with Lace this time.
I would like to hear this.
It's a queer. So it's changes a lot. Honestly, it's kind of like a year ago I wouldn't answer this way, but like now I do. Queer for me is it's the word we use to describe everybody who isn't het or cis. You know, it's like humans try to put in things in dichotomies or in 2 states, an on or an off. And just because of the confluence, like gender and sex, we wind up with the same word, and that can be queer. For me, on a particular note of the sexuality of, like, you know, states of personal identity like that, queer is how I would best describe myself. Using the word pansexual has connotations to it that you know, I'm not absolutely clear on, and I'm not absolutely comfortable with. Similarly, with being cis. You know, and then like queer sounds better. You know, it sounds like you're a fucking rock star. It's great.
True. I mean, basically
something that, like, I have trouble watching Contra's stuff because a lot of her stuff really resonates with me. But something that I really remember that kind of like got me was the idea that queerness is counterculture. It's an act of rebellion against the concept of control or social order, and that kind of resonates. So there is also a bit of that. It's taking a stand.
Yeah, that makes sense. We'll go.
And that's a very recognised academic thing as well. As I said earlier about queer core culture and things like that, it's a very well recognised phenomenon. Yeah.
Yeah.
It all ties together.
Do you want to go with your definition next, Paul?
Yeah, sure. I think it's pretty much the same. It's well, it's just a good word, to be honest. But yeah, I like it as an umbrella term. We need an umbrella term. I sometimes wonder though if we need a better one, because I know from personal experience, especially much older LGBT plus people, the word was obviously used much more as a pejorative back in their day. So literally, I've been like on speed dating nights and stuff where I've literally like sat down with an older person and like literally asked them, "Is it okay if I use the word queer?" And they've turned around, "Well, I'd rather you don't," because obviously when I was growing up, it was used exclusively as a slur. So I do sometimes think we need another term, just to make not exclude other people, not even necessarily just older people as well. There are probably younger people who also don't like it as a term. But personally, yeah, I think it's a good descriptor. I think it's a reclaimed slur in some ways, so there's always some power to that. And yeah, it is just a cool word, to be honest. It's the other thing with it.
Yeah,
But we've got to be more mindful of other members of the community who may not share that sort of sentiment.
yeah. See, I have, and this might be like unfair, but I have like small problems with those who not have a problem with it so much, but who
I
think,
try to be very careful and contextual about where I use it.
yeah,
I want to be sure that I'm around people who are comfortable with it.
yeah. It's not so much people have a problem with it that I have an issue with. It's more those who believe they can police and tone police the language of younger queer folks.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying I want to
So,
police it. I'm just trying to be like mindful of its usage in
well, let me
specific
finish.
contexts. Oh, sorry.
If I get interrupted, I lose my train of thought, especially when I'm starting to get tired. ADHD is fun.
True that.
Yeah.
Something I forgot neglected to mention earlier.
So, yeah, it's not like having so much of a problem with it or making them uncomfortable I have an issue with, right? It's those who believe they can like tone police language of like younger LGBTQIA plus folks. And it's something I've dealt with a lot. It's something you deal with a lot here in the UK in general, I've found. Holy moly. I will finish my sentence and then I will greatly mirror and the Raiders. So if you refer to yourself as queer in like on Facebook, for example, right, in the UK, one of the things I've really noticed is that you deal with the boomers who are members of that group being like, oh well, you can't use that word. That word is this, and this. And it just really irritates me because the same thing is happening at the moment with other words as well. Like, I genuinely heard the argument that we shouldn't use the word for you shouldn't use the word gay because it used to be used in a bad way, or homosexual because homo used to be used in a bad way, and it's like really, we can't
No
just
homo was a thing among cis hets I knew.
yeah.
Same. Very much same.
And it really kind of gets on my chimes that they're so willing to kind of try and remove words from people, like the ability to express themselves. Because if we don't have the ability to express ourselves like this, we end up not knowing who we are. Does that make sense?
It totally
I
makes
think that
sense.
Yeah, I think that when you're saying you're queer, it's like a different statement than just saying I'm gay. Like
Yeah.
when you're queer, you're gay in a way that doesn't like care what society thinks about it. When you're gay, you're still sort of like you're like I mean you're not really saying this, but it's almost like, I'm one of the good ones. Like I'm acceptable. I'm gay within certain parameters. And I think like the most like radical and inspiring among queer people, throughout the ages have like identified as outlaws in some way, are not like making themselves entirely acceptable to society. The Jean Genets and William S. Burroughs of the world. Like it's yeah, I don't know. I kind of don't want to. I like having an option that's not like sort of that's unapologetic to cis and straight culture.
Yeah, that entirely makes sense. Let's see.
You want me to go next? or-
Yeah, do you want to go into what queer means to you, Alison?
Yeah. I think for me, it's a lot of what everybody else has said, but it's a lot of freedom and acceptance. Um, I don't like gatekeeping in any form, right? Like I've noticed in my personal experiences, I tend to get the most pushback from people in the LGBT community, fellow people in the LGBT community, if I say that I'm a binary trans woman, because that's apparently not okay. But for me, it's like don't gatekeep, accept, let people be free. Just it's about freedom and acceptance and love and again counterculture and being rebellious and allowing people to just identify however the hell they damn well please, with their sexuality and their gender identity and expression. And if and I think queer is very much being true to yourself, and being counter and being rebellious and um, just being willing to accept people no matter what, you know, um, no matter what someone's gender identity and gender expression is, no matter what their sexuality and sexual orientation is, believing in the concepts of dual attraction, and just letting people be. Um, yeah, that's what being queer means to me, is just, you know, be good to one another, be kind to one another, be counter to the cisgender heteronormative world that we live in, be rebellious, be you, don't let people put you in a box, and just build your own world and live in it, and live your life and be good and all that kind of good stuff. So just yeah,
Yeah.
as we say, trans men are men, trans women are women, and non-binary people are awesome and valid.
Amen.
Yeah, very much so.
Thank you.
Master, you go next.
Am I the last one?
Nope, there's still Irene and Mother Say to go.
Okay. Did you want to jump in, Irene, or?
Oh, I thought I already did.
You made a couple of comments, but you didn't go into what queerness actually meant for you as a whole.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I only say because I found out I was trans basically yesterday. So
baby trans.
Yeah, so in terms of what queerness means to me, by the definition of basically being not cis het, I kind of assumed I was non-binary but cis, which I don't think is how that works at all. Not at all. Yeah, okay.
No. No, not at all. I mean, I'm not non-binary, so I would let non-binary people say whether they think that, but I would say no.
That is not at all what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, in terms of queerness, I feel like there's a certain kind of je ne sais quoi, a little bit of, I don't know, a certain energy to being queer, I guess. I had a conversation about this with someone I happen to know through a lifestyle sexually. We talked about kind of being bi and what it meant to be queer. You could be bi but not necessarily identify as queer. I don't know. I think it kind of depends on probably the circle. So that's kind of how I understood before. But now kind of looking back, I'm like, yeah, you know what? I am kind of a little bit queer, aren't I?
A little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's me. So, and I grew up around, I kind of alluded to this
One of
before.
us.
Yeah, exactly. I found my community basically through Twitch, and that's kind of one of the reasons I'm an extremely online person too, is because basically I've reached out to other queer people, like-minded people that way. Also having a major depressive disorder and ADHD, there's a certain kind of tribe vibe there, you know?
Mm.
Yeah. So in terms of, I think of how Lady Rainclad summed it up was very beautiful. Like, I'm like a gender abolitionist in the sense of, or to the point of, like, we replace gender with just the moniker of human being. And I would use kind of that framing, like a human being, to kind of like push back and kind of like read a lot of the kind of conversations we have with the not so tolerant groups of the political spectrum. I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually interesting. We were having a conversation about this on Irene's panel last week. Was it last week? I think it was last week.
I'm not surprised. Irene's super based.
And Liru mentioned that we should reframe it as like gender liberation. So
yes,
not so much we're taking away these identifiers.
I'm down with that. Yeah.
We're taking away the stereotypes and the roles and the prejudices that go against these identifiers and come with them, which I think is a much...
if I can.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
I don't want to. I don't want to steal from Mama Say, sorry, but for me, I consider myself a gender role abolitionist, is what I like to say. Because I think it's okay for concepts of masculinity and femininity to exist, as long as, again, it's not about like control and sexism and, you know, intolerance and placing roles on people. You know, so like I do know there are several trans women friends of mine, for example, that are like very much into, I have to pass because this means to me a thing. But like, passing shouldn't be something that is necessary, right? I think basically like the gender construct that we have should be opt out, right? Like if you don't want to be a part of it, then opt out. But if you want to be a part of it, then
yeah, and
be a part of it.
I think that'll definitely be easier the further we go in terms of trans people becoming more mainstream.
Yeah,
as well.
agreed.
Because then we'll be used to seeing people on all shades of the spectrum, so it won't matter anymore. Maschi, were you finished?
I was just going to add a quick little thing. Yeah, basically about openness, representation, demonstrating to people that there are alternative kind of ways to live and ways to love. And a lot of, destigmatization and humanization. Those kind of are the political focuses, I think, of kind of the LGBTQ2SI plus community going forward right now. And by the way, you don't have to say it that way. If LGBTQ plus, I think would be kind of like a fair, I don't know, a fair compromise for people who are troubled by that. But I just prefer to be inclusive and specific. So that's all.
Yeah, they added the number and it completely ruined my brain. I have dyslexia as it is and dyscalculia, so they mixed the letters and the numbers, and my brain went, wait, what? And it will not remember it at all. And I don't know why. Irene, did you want to go next with what queer means to you?
Sure. Sorry, my dramatic switch to a scene of me big on my anyway. So it just means unwilling to conform.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I'd even say that like there's a possibility, like I could see the term one day meaning more than just, you know, gender identity and orientation, and like the kind of lifestyle you live around sex. Like I think it could, be kind of an all-encompassing word, and if that word were to take like a positive, sort of connotation, I think that would have amazing effects on society. If people weren't so obsessed with, sort of fitting their square pegs into, the round holes of society, you know what I mean? If people really had permission, and that means permission from each other, not just like permission, obviously permission from whatever authorities too, right? But like, the social like repression of this sort of thing is a big part of what keeps us all from living our best lives. And I'd love to see that become like a banner that like basically includes like it becomes the conventional wisdom essentially, that queer is a good thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just want to say
Yeah,
that
nailed it.
Stranger Things is in my chat, and they say that you and Waluigi make a fabulous power couple.
Interesting.
Because of the little Waluigi plushie.
Wait, can we have an Irene plushie?
That has to be a thing.
That'd be
That
great.
should be a thing. Mabase, you're up. What does being queer mean to you?
Um, hmm. I never really thought about it outside of it just like meaning like a group of people who have a particular experience that surrounding like sexual repression and like just general repression of alternative lifestyles. Like that seems to be the thing that's always like that always kind of stuck like with me. But also I guess I would say like what I'm like, pretty new to this, so I don't really think that I have like that much room to talk, right?
You always have room to talk. It doesn't matter how new you are at being queer, right? Or how recently you realised you identify as. Your experiences are your experiences, your feelings about being queer and like how you interact with other queer people and how that label fits and makes you feel. That's yours. Like exclusively yours. That is nobody else's. Nobody else can speak for you on that. It doesn't matter if they've been out as queer for 50 years. You will know things that they don't because you know your experiences.
Very validating point. And Mabase, for what it's worth, I kind of had the same kind of like anxiety and kind of like hesitations. So I feel what you're feeling.
Your experiences and your views and your opinions are valid, like period. Regardless of how quote unquote new you are to your journey and your um, grand adventure towards discovering yourself. And I, for one, and I know a lot of people on this panel that are quote unquote older and more into the queer space, like will never stand for anyone that's brand new or young in the queer space being shouted down or being told your opinion doesn't matter because you're new or any of that. I won't stand for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
agreed.
So yeah,
Thank you, Lady Rain.
you're welcome. Because we were all new, right? So I only figured out that I was like, again, I only figured out that I was trans 6 years ago. So because everything got repressed and stuff, and then I only figured out that I was pan, lesbian, and poly after coming out as trans. So like, we were all new once. I didn't even know what trans was when I came out. So
Yeah.
and now I do.
I totally didn't either. Casual test on this.
Yeah. So especially for Mabase and Maskachin, yeah, don't if if anybody ever does any of that stuff to you, come to me and I will be loud, annoying, obnoxious, angry trans mama, and I will come protect and attack whoever needs attack and protect. So, because you need protect.
And if necessary, I will always be daddy.
I appreciate the solidarity, comrades.
Yes, must protect baby
same.
queer.
True.
Must protect baby queer.
So, next one, I'm hoping this will be a bit of a quicker one. Is there anything specific any of you would really like to see in terms of representation in mainstream media?
I don't know explicitly of stuff I can think about on screen. I definitely think in terms of like if for example films, for example, I think elevation of like writing and production staff from minority backgrounds needs to be improved. You know.
More trans people and more non-binary people, like everywhere, would be good. Please, thanks. Okay, bye.
What about you, Irene? Is there anything specific you'd like to see?
I don't actually know. They might have done this already, but like, I would like to see more like left-leaning podcasts and like talk shows like the Majority Report. I can't actually remember if they have a like trans member of the MR crew or not at this point, but yeah, I think that would be pretty cool. Just in terms of you see a lot of trans streamers on like the Twitch scene and in YouTube creation, but like you don't really see them in some of the like more institutional platforms like that, and that would be really cool to see.
Yeah, I agree. It very much would. We'll go to Lace next.
Put me on the spot, man. Right. So there's this guy on YouTube. I'm not going to give him a name because he's a chud, right? But for whatever reason, he wrote a light novel, yeah, which was a gonzo light novel about him trying to write a light novel, right? And in it, he talked about his own sense of gender dysphoria and his possibilities of his different sexualities and stuff like that. And in it, he actually wrote this really cool treatment for a series, which is an anime, because he's an anime chud. And it's a classic, it's a very classic, like, magical girl story. Except it's a male character who is the magical girl, who at the beginning of the show is kind of like playing a male version of like the Power Rangers or Ultraman or something like that. And he realizes that he's trans. And as the show goes on, he takes on more feminine attributes until it becomes a magical girl show. And I always thought that that was fucking badass.
No, by the way, the only thing that I have to say about the weeb comments, nanami watashi wa Kira desu. Hajimemashite, minasan.
I feel called out all the fucking time.
Nyan, 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 ni hao, nyan. Gorgeous, delicious, the day gorgeous. Nyan, 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 ni hao, nyan.
So two things. One, Hellsing Ultimate Abridged best anime. And two, anime is based. I mean, go watch Death Note. For those of you who like have
not the live action.
Yeah, exactly. For those of you who watched like the live action on Netflix and you haven't watched the original, shame on you. That's that actually revolts me. It is. I'm not getting into this right now.
Okay, everybody's wrong. Okay, leave it to the oldest person on the panel to teach you about old school 80s anime. Okay, if you want to learn about old
I'm
school,
really sorry for derailing it with fucking anime talk all of a sudden.
What are you
need
talking
It was
about, Ryan?
legitimately
All I'm gonna say-
tangential to just the idea of somebody realizing that they're
Why
trans.
every time someone brings those
just
vapes
just
out,
let
this
me.
is what
All I'm
happens.
gonna say is that if you want to learn about anime, come talk to me. That's it. That's my only tangential thing. Is if you want to learn about anime, come talk to me.
That's fine. I have legitimate problems with it. There's so much anime out there that's problematic. So much.
Well, yeah, obviously. I just kind of figured that was like an accepted.
Disproportionately
Yeah.
to everything else. There is so much anime out there that's problematic. Like there are huge portions of it that, I mean, make adults look like kids and kids look like adults and sexualizes kids by making them look like adults, and it's a whole fucking weird thing that I'm not a fan of.
She's actually an 800-year-old dragon girl.
That doesn't make it better. She looks 12.
Feeling a little attacked, like
Okay.
legitimately.
That's my problem with it. It's
Yeah.
the
Alright.
yikesiness around age.
Okay, so I apologize for bringing up something that's kind of outside, but moving on to kind of like a bit more of a generic thing that doesn't have like the talking aspect, you know, like the meandering aspect of it. Something very specific would be a show in which you depict the process of being trans from before the point of realization and before the point of decision, right through to the end point. The end point being, you know, like the end of the show where they are newly transitioned, they have a good life, a good life. I think it would actually be kind of, you know, there's that idea, there's just that power, there's that power to seeing an idealized, I guess, image of what people strive for, and that's power. That's cool. I think it would be good.
Yeah, that actually would be really cool.
Yeah, as long
I
as
think
they actually get a trans writer for it.
Exactly.
And a trans actor, ideally, that is transitioning.
I think we need a Lady Raincloud movie, personally.
No.
I was gonna say,
I mean,
that's a fucking
considering the
terrible
amount of
idea.
people on Twitch and Twitter that hate my ever loving guts, that wouldn't go over well, I don't think.
I'd watch it.
Yeah, I have had a interesting life, to say the least. So, yeah, full of lots of ups and lots of downs. Yeah. And September 25th is 2 years on HRT, so yay.
Nice.
Congratulations.
Yeah, my 2-year transiversary. So, yeah, I feel good about it. I forgot about it. I've got boobs now, so that's a plus. The problem is that they hurt all the damn time because they're still growing. So, you know.
You do not
And
need
to
talk
anybody
me
that
about boob pain.
yeah, and to anybody that says that trans women don't have cycles, y'all have no idea what you're talking about. Because yes, we do.
True. Even men have cycles. They're just different to women.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's just not as pronounced.
Yeah, and it's not as pronounced for most men. Some men I know feel it very sharply. And it's like a longer cycle, so it's like over 3 months as opposed to a month. But yeah, like my other half gets hit by his really hard. So like every 3 months he'll have like a week or 2 weeks of just being miserable and feeling bloated and feeling bad about himself and being overtired and overly emotional, you know. And he hates
Every
it.
3, like mine is like literally a monthly cycle.
Yeah, but my other half is cis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my other half is a cis guy, so yeah, it's like it's every 3 months on the dot, like clockwork. My own cycle is all balked because I've got what's the word? I can't remember. I've got birth control that messes with it. but it's not an implant and it's not a pill and it's not the injection. It's the intrauterine one that I can't remember the name of. IUD. That's the bunny.
Hmm.
I have a cold.
IE.
So I'm just all over the place. What was I gonna say? Yeah, so who's been? We had LRC, we had Irene, we had Lace. Did any of did Mavase, Cause, or Maschi go yet?
Yeah, I've been.
Okay, so Mavase, you go next.
Let's see. Yeah, in terms of representation, I guess I guess as you would expect anyone who knows me, right? I just want to see more Black people who are queer, like loving each other. Like I would like that. I think that would be cool and cute, and be great. Get some stuff in there. Maybe some bisexuals. Maybe they can be men. I think that needs to be a thing. Yeah, those are that's probably my thing. It's pretty bare minimum, but like let's get them out there first, and then we can criticize them and make them better. And I would. That's what I was saying. Like they just don't exist at the moment. Like almost every like Black dude, if he's queer, he's just gay, which is good for him in terms of representation. But like bi people exist. Not every dude who likes dudes is just a gay man.
Yeah, that's something I've noticed a lot. Like, if you're not a drag queen, and if they're not a drag queen and they are a Black gay man, they are incredibly effeminate. They are usually large. It's like really over the top and absurd, and it infuriates me. Maschi, you're up. What kind of representation would you like to see?
Yeah, wow. Definitely a lot more humanization, a lot more normalization, destigmatization. I always kind of joke about the idea of like being normal because it's a fairly relative concept, especially growing up queer and not realizing it. I also went through a culture in my family that, as I kind of mentioned earlier, I wouldn't tell them out of practicality, but it's not something that I'm ashamed of. It's really more of like a disconnect thing. So having more representation, more normalization, that kind of stuff, media, people sharing their stories. It reminds me of a low-key line where he says, be an example, how to live, how to love, that kind of thing. Yeah. And yeah, we should. I mean, there's also very different kinds of erasures and things too, like bi-erasure. Trans communities are very targeted, especially with current geopolitics. So I guess within a specific focus on that.
Yeah.
That's about it.
I mean, I personally would love to see not just in front of the camera, but as Cole said earlier, behind the scenes as well, more trans people in general, more stories about trans people and their experiences, more non-binary representation, more poly representation, more pan representation in a not skanky way, if you know what I mean. Like, they're not just a slut. Pan is just a thing that happens to be a part of them, as opposed to sluttiness being the kind of go over for pansexuality and the visual for it, and then it just entirely being a stereotype around that.
Question.
I did. Sorry.
Is it still a harem if it's all girls?
Yes.
Damn.
Yeah, so in general,
Denied.
more queer representation everywhere, both in Hollywood, in TV, behind cameras, in like writing rooms.
Normal actors, Christ's sake.
Yeah, more particularly trans actors. If you are going to make a movie about trans people, hire fucking trans actors. Stop hiring Scarlett fucking Johansson and telling her to dress like a man.
Yeah.
To her credit, she did back out of that.
Yeah, she didn't back out of the one where she basically did all but yellow face, though, did she? And she only backed out of the trans one. Like, she wasn't going to. She argued about that for months before she actually backed out of it.
That kind of approach is gross too, just because you're basically denying the group while profiting off of them. It's fucked up.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna move on to audience questions. I had a couple more, but I'm really tired. I'm struggling to straighten my thoughts out and speak coherently. Muses are not. I will ask your question, but only if people can give me a short answer. And I'm so tired, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to answer it. So I will start with that one because I think the next one is going to be shorter. Muses asked, how would you suggest non-binary folks discuss their identity with their partners if the partner was previously unaware?
That was a targeted question, by the way.
Yeah, I know it was. I could tell it was a dig, and quite frankly, you deserve the dig. Partners should have been the first people you told.
I'm gonna push back on that. Sometimes, because I didn't tell my partner I was trans until I had talked to several other people, and that's because there's probably a lot of fear and a lot of worry and a lot of concern, a lot of anxiety. So, especially if your partner's cis.
Okay, yeah, you're right. I phrased that badly. What I should have said was,
Yeah.
you shouldn't have let her find out via a fucking panel.
Yeah, again, shitty timing.
Not gonna make a comment on that.
That's probably a conversation you should have had beforehand.
No, I fully agree.
But I mean, it gets the awkward conversation out of the way, I guess. Or part of it, at least. Now, for me, when I was telling my other half, I spoke about it with one other person before I actually came out to him. I spoke to Lumiru because I wasn't enormously sure, and like this is the more recent, like since pulling it back out again after just shoving it away in the box because I got a bad reception the first time around, right? When I started kind of pulling it back out of the box, I spoke to Lumiru because they were kind of really integral to me feeling comfortable enough to open the box again. And we had this chat while they were streaming, and it made me feel secure enough to turn around to him and just say, look, this is the way it is. I'm trans, I'm non-binary, whether you like it or not. That's just how it is. I mean, there's still some struggles there that we have around it, but I mean, he accepts it for the most part. It's not something he ever complains about or has any active hatred towards. Like, he's like actively fights with people on the internet who are transphobes and envy erasers and what have you, and trans medicalists. But I think there is a difference between knowing intellectually that these things are wrong and knowing emotionally when you're with somebody that it's not different. Like, they're still them, if that makes sense. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents. Cause, do you want to have a go?
No, I think you pretty much covered it there. I think obviously, yeah, make sure you've got a decent sort of community behind you, people you can run things by, concerns you have, and then try and think about how you're going to approach the conversation. One thing as well is like try and anticipate like negative responses you might get from your partner. So just try and place yourselves in their shoes a little bit so that you have responses to any conceivable negative thing they may come up with. I mean, obviously that's not going to be entirely possible. You can't think of everything, you can't anticipate everything, but I think that's something worth keeping in mind as well. If the tables were turned, if it was flipped over, how might you respond in that situation?
Yeah, and I think it's also really important to realise that at the end of the day, everybody is just human, and just because somebody has an initially misunderstanding or badly understanding visceral kind of cringe away reaction does not mean that that is how their reaction will stay.
Yeah.
And how their feelings about the topic will stay. But as with everything, communication is the most important thing. What about you, Master? Do you have any thoughts?
Sorry, refresh me on the original question.
How would you suggest non-binary folks discuss their identity with their partners if their partner was
yes.
previously unaware?
Well, I guess the main piece of personal anecdote advice that I've just experienced would be, don't let your partner find out via a panel.
You fucking think?
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
that's kind of stating the obvious a little too much.
I mean, there is an argument to be made that there are potentially valid reasons and justifiable reasons why you have not yet had that conversation, right?
But it's still shitty.
Can we possibly not dogpile?
No one's dogpiling.
Okay, it just felt a little like it to me. Like, so sorry.
Yeah, like Cause mentioned earlier, right, and LRC both mentioned this earlier, there are huge amounts of fear when it comes to coming out to anybody, right? Especially when you get to that point where you're like, oh shit, this is actually like a very big part of my identity. Oh shit. And then your brain goes into the kind of the catastrophizing spiral of, oh, but what if this, and what if that, and what if they leave, and what if they hate it, or what if they say something transphobic, or this, or that, or the other. And all of that is perfectly normal, like, to experience. Yeah, and if it were me, that's very much a conversation that needs to be had. But try not to beat yourself up for not having it yet too much. Because, I mean, I can understand why. Does that make sense?
I feel what you're putting down, yeah. To be clear, I had mentioned the non-binary thing. I just, again, I mentioned the translation earlier about, trans being the umbrella non-binary falls under.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then personally myself, I'm just kind of still processing it. It just happened, so I wasn't even like ready to have that conversation yet.
Which is absolutely fine. Yeah,
Which is ironic, by the way.
Okay, so this is a question for everybody. What are the simple things that allies can do to help make a positive impact for the queer community?
Listen to us for one thing.
Yeah, that. Listen.
Yeah.
Allyship is like listening and supporting rather than listening and helping, I guess. That's not the right way of wording it, but like.
I get what you mean, though.
I mean,
there's a thing. It's like a thing that humans do, right? It's like cross-cultural. You see someone that you empathize with, and so you want to do something to lessen the burden that they're on. You know. The problem is, though, is that oftentimes that can come off as quite patronizing. You know. And as a result, like, what would be, yo, stop killing us, stop telling me that I don't exist, stop being a dick.
I think in terms of the like, especially for trans people as well, maybe don't read so many like newspapers. Maybe try and look up some fucking scientific studies. Maybe that would be a good place to start as well as an ally.
It would be a start.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
I mean,
don't buy any J.K. Rowling novels. That's another good way to go.
The example the person who asked the question gave was like, oh, would it help if we normalize like pronouns in bio? And when I saw that, my initial thought was, no. If you want to put them in your bio, do, but that's like completely irrelevant. All it does is end up making you a target for the anti-SJWs. It doesn't do fucking anything for anybody else.
I think it's also it's like almost like a liberal appeal to it's almost, I hate the term virtue signaling. It's like there was a story about how businesses are contemplating asking everyone to put their pronouns in emails and stuff,
Oh,
like at
no.
the signatures at the end. It's just like
A lot
it's
of
just
meaningless bureaucratic shit. Yeah.
it's
I mean,
performative. It doesn't mean anything.
I don't agree.
No.
Go ahead.
No. I don't want to be contrarian here, but no, I think. See, I, whenever I see people actually genuinely want to do things for the concept of allyship, which I don't personally like the word ally because alliances can shift and change, right?
Mhm.
So, I don't have a better word. All I know is I just don't like the term ally because, you know, I can be your ally today and not your ally tomorrow.
Solidarity, perhaps.
Yeah, solidarity, being an advocate, being, you know, but I hate, maybe hate's too strong a word, but I very, very much dislike whenever people are sensing a change in society and deciding of their own free will to go along with it. I hate, see, I'm doing it again, but I don't want to. I'm tired. I don't like when we throw that whole "you're virtue signaling," because to me that's like reductionist and dismissive to people who, you know, are starting to wake up and see things, and deciding that, hey, this isn't okay. Like, I'm never going to see somebody who's cishet on Twitter and like a mutual of mine, a very good friend of mine, Izzy Rizenti, is cis lesbian on Twitter, and she does trans follow. She has a very big platform, and she uses it to boost trans and non-binary voices. And I'll see fellow trans people say, "Oh, you're virtue signaling." It's like, well, what do you want her to do? She has like tens of thousands of followers. You just want her to sit back and shut up, or do you want her to be an advocate for us? Because none of us have the combined platform that she does, and she's using it for us. And I think when we see people that are trying to be an advocate, an ally, whatever, and we immediately hit them with, "Oh, well, you're just virtue signaling," I think that's bad. I don't like that at all. And also, as far as the whole pronouns in the bio thing and normalization of pronouns, I have mine in my bio because I'm used to being misgendered all the time. And I think to say that putting pronouns in your bio makes you a target sort of insinuates don't do it because you don't want to be a target, which means let's be afraid. And I think if people do it, especially cis people, then it is a normalization thing, it is an education thing, and it is a, well, now there's so many targets, have fun. And I think also this was actually something that was on Twitter earlier, that you know, normalizing cis people putting pronouns in their bio does make them a target, but it pulls the attention away from the trans people who, in a good way, in my opinion, the negative attention
Yeah.
away
One
from,
thing is, sorry, go on. Sorry.
yeah, it's what, you know, away from trans people. Like, so if Izzy Rizenti, who's a cis lesbian with like 40-50,000 followers, puts pronouns in her bio and gets people coming after her, and me with my 1,300 followers on Twitter just gets to post about, and, you know, oh my god, they announced Final Fantasy 16, kind of a good thing, right? So, you know, leave me alone. And if she wants to be the shield, let her be the shield. And I think, again, we were just talking earlier in the stream about love and acceptance and letting people be and do. And I really don't like whenever we see people start to make change that we want them to make, we then chastise them for making it. Oh, well, you're just, you know, you're just on the bandwagon. You're just virtue signaling. Well, they're making the change we wanted them to make in the first place, and now we're chastising them for that. It just kind of doesn't feel right to me.
Well, I mean, okay, I need to clarify some things. One, I have my pronouns in my bio as well. My complaint was more of like strictly thinking about the thing about like businesses doing it. in the same way that so I'm sort of I was talking a bit too broadly there, and perhaps the way I phrased it.
But
But
don't we want the businesses to normalize it too, to make trans people and whatnot feel
yeah,
comfortable in the workspace?
I guess I just wonder how effective it is. It just seems like it's almost like it's a press release to say, oh yeah, we're contemplating doing this, and then it's never actually going to be followed up on. Someone like Izzy, for example, though, she walks it like she talks it. That's the
Yes.
difference. She's
Yeah.
like, she pumps everything into her advocacy. I don't trust like fucking multinational corporations to say, oh well, we've sent out this release from our HR department saying we're encouraging our departments to put their pronouns in bios, and then they've got that new part of the news cycle covered, and then they can just go back to not doing that. That's the difference. That was the point I probably failed to make there. It's the maybe I'm just overly cynical, but I don't like. And I'm probably one of like the most centristy sort of people here. I'm definitely a sock den, but like in terms of like analysis of things like that, I really hate manipulation of businesses from queer representation. It's something I'm very, very God, I'm tired as well now.
From the industry
of.
The industry that I work in, it's definitely something we want, right? So a friend of mine works for Brace Yourself Games, and she's trans, and she's now the second trans person to. Oh, who'd we lose?
Mastery.
Oh, to be at that's sorry. There's another trans person now, a second trans person to be there, and you know the studio lead did want to make a big deal out of, you know, you're going to use the pronouns that they ask you to use. This is not a request. This is what you're going to do. We can all make them feel welcome and accepted by doing this as well. If you know, by putting our pronouns. And I know Contra had this thing about, you know, feeling uncomfortable with pronouns and whatnot, which I kind of can sort of see the point she's coming from. But again, it's like sometimes I feel like as the LGBT community, we ask for things to change, and then they do, and then we get mad. It just sort of feels weird to me.
I have two problems here. The first one with the whole like putting your pronouns in your email thing. The issue I have with that is that it is very possible that instead of like enforcing you call them by the pronouns that they have asked you to call them by, what you will end up with is basically trans people being a target, more of a target, because like if they don't want to come out but they have to put their correct pronouns in their email or whatever, it could lead to discrimination later on if they change their pronouns when they're ready to come out, etc, etc, etc. Right, there's a whole host of fucking plot holes I see with that. And number two, with things like pronouns in bio, when it's cis people doing it, especially with the way the person in question asked, I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it came across very much as, how can I help with the least amount of effort possible? That's what I have a problem with. This fucking slack, lazy advocacy, and it's like, no, that's not what that is. If you're gonna do it, do it. Don't just fucking pretend to do it and pay lip service.
I'm probably gonna get canceled again for saying this, but I'd rather have slack, lazy advocacy than none at all.
Oh yeah, I do agree with that. Even in, again, going back to what I was saying about businesses and that, like cynical manipulation is better than outright contempt. You know, if you're gonna do something small, do it. You know.
Yeah.
But, I'm still suspicious of it. As I say, it's, you know, maybe I'm just an overly cynical person. It drives me in strange directions. But yeah, no, if the bare minimum, the only thing you're prepared to do is put your pronouns in your bio, then yeah, sure, do it. That's fine. Yeah, I don't have.
Of course, that is, you know, and to not fight with Kez on this, because, you know, I adore Kez, but that is the bare minimum. Like I know Kez and I will agree. Like if you are putting your pronouns in your bio, that's like, congratulations, you
know how words work.
You know how, yeah, you did the absolute bare minimum. Now I'm glad that you did the bare minimum.
But it's
I'm
not
not going to give you a
fucking
gold
enough. Do
star for
better.
it. Yeah, I'm not going to give you a gold star for it.
So I'm barely scraping a fucking D on a test, you know.
Yeah, but I still would rather you have done the bare minimum than nothing at all. So, you know,
Yeah.
I guess it's my controversial hot take for the.
See, this is
for
the
the
weird thing with me, because we do have so many very passionate advocates, and they're,
We do.
you know, they're getting more and more and more and more. I end up kind of being like, well, if you're not going to bother actually doing anything, and instead you are just going to pay lip service, then don't fucking bother.
The problem is though that inaction is action. So if people are going to be turned away from doing anything, they're supporting the people who hate us and want us to die.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem. It feels like, you know, when you're a kid and you really, really like want your parent to be like, oh, I'm proud of you, or like, oh, you did this picture at school, or you did this really good do of homework, or you wrote this really good essay, or whatever. And you really like desperately want affirmation from your parent, and what you get is, oh, that's nice, dear. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
It feels like the most half-hearted bullshit.
It's good we're having these conversations though, at least.
Yeah.
You know, that's the other thing. We need to have these debates.
It's like, if you want to help, sure, put your pronouns in your bio, but you know what else you can do? Challenge transphobia when you see it. Ban transphobes from your Twitch chat. Encourage other streamers that you're friends with to ban transphobes from their Twitch chat. Stop, like, treating transphobes and their talking points as if they're in any way valid or debatable.
Was the person who asked the question specifically a Twitch streamer though? Like, or were they
Yes.
just talking in a more general sense? Oh, okay, fair enough. I just assumed they were talking in a very general sense.
You know, forewarn trans friend streamers of transphobes that end up in your chat that you ban. Like, there are loads of things you can actually do to help them. Do help. Pronouns in your bio is like, you know, taking a piss to put out fire.
I mean, from my perspective, having been through so much shit, being trans for the last few years, and having been so doomer, I see people even doing the bare minimum, and it makes me smile because it's like, you know, hey, at least they're doing something rather than the opposite, which is not nothing, but worse than nothing, you know, like attacking and defaming and pulling in J.K. Rowling. Like, I would rather see somebody do something simplistic and easy for them to do than see them do nothing. But I would also rather not see the opposite of that, which is them, you know, be a transphobe or spout, you know, debunk BS nonsense. I guess that's just me. Like, I don't know. I've been in therapy for the last 3 months, so maybe it's starting to rub off.
You're getting there. Slowly
I
but
haven't been in
surely.
therapy for years, so maybe that's where I'm going wrong. That's where my dysfunction's starting to show.
Lace, did you want to add something?
Very clear that I'm a cis dude. You know, I use they them. I'm pretty clear. I'm pretty sure I'm cis, so I don't want it to give me what I'm
You're breaking up.
You're cutting in and out a lot.
mumbling because I'm a bit nervous. I don't want to be like putting my foot in where I'm not really appreciated, wanted, or just don't want people out. But it strikes me that what people here are talking about is just the concept of responding to pain and trauma. It's shite being gendered, it's shite being dead now, it's shite being all these horrible things. And there's advocacy and there's allyship and all of that stuff, and then everybody has like different opinions on what that level is. Because, you know, people have gone through shit, and like asking someone like, how can I help? You're not asking how can you help the entirety of the queer community. You're asking how can I help you personally? Because you're talking to that person's personal.
Well, I mean, I also think that that's something that the vast majority of the LGBT community has in common is trauma.
Yeah.
So, I myself have quite a lot of it. Not to play the Russian Olympics or anything, but I think trauma is quite norm, unfortunately. So I try and look for any small thing to help have the positivity to help counteract that. So, when I see cis allies just trying anything, it's so much better than walking down the street and having someone yell a slur at me from their car. And yeah, I don't see anybody defend me at the time, but at least I know there are some people somewhere that are willing to at least do something. So, but I actually need to go take my meds. I'm not feeling too well, so I need to go ahead and say my good nights and goodbyes and go take my meds and take a break.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for stopping by.
Thanks for coming in.
I hope you feel better.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Love y'all. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So I'm probably going to cut out as well. I'm really tired.
Well, I was just about to wrap up, actually.
Oh, okay. Cool. Sweet.
Okay, so I was going to say, yeah, last thoughts, plugs, etc. Oh, all the cameras are off now. Fine. Or at least they are for me for some reason. That's very weird. All the cameras just died. They're back now, though.
Oh, I'm back now.
Yeah.
Woo! Yeah, I've been trying. I've left Discord, I think, more than once. I've been trying to get to come back.
Yeah. So
Eventual victory, yeah. Sorry.
I'm gonna go around the room. Last thoughts, plug yourself, all that good stuff, okay? We'll start with Lace.
Sorry, I'm just following Lady Raincloud. Please, guys, whatever, if you're not logged in, if you're not following or keeping up with any of the people in the panel, go along, do the same. It's always important to kind of like, even if you don't sit in on somebody's whatever, it helps the algorithm, can make life a bit easier, I live in Leeds, and I'm very involved in like the trans shelters, trans advocacy work, working specifically in like I said earlier, role-playing games and stuff like that. And with that in mind, keep the idea of like possibly looking that kind of stuff up. You can easily put aside a bit of time just to be on the phone, listening to somebody who needs to talk. And like, it don't cost you nothing, except maybe. But yeah, whatever. I'm a bit of a dead man when it comes to the ins and outs of being active on the internet and producing stuff and being a content creator. But I'm going to try doing that again. It's a new life and a new day and a new haircut.
Amen.
Follow me on Twitter, Laysargar. I am a garment worn by a pirate. Congrats.
If you want to drop your Twitter link into the Twitch chat, feel free, guys. Matchy.
Hey, I'm Mashi. This is my first panel. You can find me down where Kez shouted me out. I'm also on social media, Twitter. If you go to my channel, there's a command, Mashi, social, either of those will work. You can find it all there. All my stuff is in my panels as well. I talk politics, news. We watch Democracy Now! Basically at the start of every stream. I also do some gaming stuff too, StarCraft, Dota, Rocket League, Rocksmith I mentioned earlier, variety stuff. drop by, give me a follow, check me out, give me just lurk the news, learn some stuff. Good times. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, Cause, you're up.
Thank you so much for letting me on. It was great meeting you all. Kez, thank you for the panel. It was really enjoyable. I do pop culture commentary, music reviews, just generally anything that interests me in the chat. We do a little politics over there as well. It's twitch.tv/cause, which is CAUS3. There's the link. And then as it's spelt on the screen there, that's my Twitter handle. So it's @causes with the 3.
Okay, cool. Irene, you're up.
Hey, I'm Irene, no comment chick. I do panels, debates, React content, politics. I like to concentrate on narrative. It's kind of what I always come back to as being like this powerful, like metaphors that moves us all in ways we don't even realize. And yeah, tomorrow we've got Bird Brains, a really cool panel. We're going to be talking about truth in the Trump era, or maybe soon to be post-Trump era. I don't know. I don't want to jinx it, but we'll see. So we've got Riley Grace Rishong, Vadim Newquist, Proud Communist, Sig Natural, Mix Vivian Wolf, Catherine Dominates, and Danabo all coming by, and maybe more. I threw a bunch of invites out at the last minute, and like everybody was like, yes, this is the week. So we'll see. We might have a huge panel. Whatever, maybe somebody will drop out. But yeah, we always have fun over at Bird Brains, just like we did last week with Kaz and Lumi. And, we've got a cool one lined up for this week too, exploring some deep questions with a little bit of a debate, but more of a discussion format, more of just like using each other's brains to kind of think of something in a way that, we haven't been able to. When you have access to somebody else's brain power, you can think a lot better, I find, at least. So yeah, check us out on Bird Brains. No comment, twitch.tv/no comment check, and same no comment check on Twitter. Thank you.
Yeah, if you end up needing another moderator because you let it get too big again, let me know.
Hey, I can see that that's a common problem, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
But it's hard to turn somebody down after you've invited them. So for sure.
Oh yeah, that's something I've started to experience recently myself. That's why this one ended up so big, because I had some people say no and then say yes after the fact because something like fell through or whatever, and it was like, oh no, now I've got like 12 people wanting to be on the panel. Yeah.
Yeah, it always happens.
But yeah, so if you need a hand, just shout. Everybody, if you're not, go follow everybody on this panel, by the way, because they are all in one way or another fucking awesome. Mabasset, you're up. You're silent, boy. I don't know if you
I'll push the talk. I always forget about it. Okay, you guys can find me just about almost anywhere on the internet as Mabasset, but the main places are Twitch, YouTube, and then Twitter is Mabasset, and I think it's YT on the end because someone took the normal, no edited version, which sucks. But yeah, I had fun. Thanks for having me.
You're always welcome. You're always welcome. That's not a problem. Irene, are you gonna be streaming for a bit longer?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll raid into you then. So I'm gonna hop out so I can just have a quick chat with my chat, and I will be raiding into you shortly. Thank you all for coming along. I had a good time. I'm sorry I had to kind of heavy-handedly steer the conversation, and I'm sorry it went on so late.
Probably for the better, to be honest.
Never be like that, man.
Good. It was a good time.
Time passes when you're having fun, I suppose.
Indeed.
All right, I'll see you all later.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks again.
Bye.